Just briefing of today's business, departmental briefing in United Youth, briefing from Steps to Success contractor, departmental briefing in 0 hours, departmental briefing on the legislative consent motion on pension schemes and Northern Ireland Assembly Research and Information Service on budget scrutiny training. Members, I have apologies for Phil Flanagan, Claire Sugden and Bron McGachan, who will be late. Is there any other apologies? If not, moving on, chairperson's business. Can I just advise members that an informal meeting with the University of Ulster, Queen's University Belfast and the Open University to discuss the implication of budget cut for the HE sector took place on the 4th of November, and I think most of the members here were present. Also advise members an informal meeting with the University and College Union to discuss the implication of the budget cuts for the HE sector also took place on the 5th of November. Members, of pages 7 and 8 is correspondence issued to the University of Ulster and Queen's University Belfast requesting that they engage meaningfully with the UCU regarding the budget cuts. Members also note that financial scrutiny training provided by the Assembly Research and Information Service will take place in closed session today at the end of this meeting. This is in preparation for the ministerial briefing on the budget at the next committee meeting on the 26th of November. Also, members will note that the Employment Appeal Tribunal made on the 4th of November that UK companies have been misinterpreting the Working Time Directive and related working time regulations implemented in the UK in 1998. Do members agree to write to the Department requesting details of what action it has taken following that ruling?
Sure.
Okay, members agreed. Members, at page 5, the committee visit report from its visit to Springvale Employment and Learning Solutions of the 5th of November. As part of our inquiry into the SEM provision in Northern Ireland. The members agree to include the report in the committee inquiry report?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, members?
Sure. To say on that, I think for the first time we were probably given an opportunity to look at the types of training that may be available in it. And if there are other the training facilities that may offer the same type of thing, it would certainly allow you to have a wider look at the different types of training.
Yeah,
that's for a research paper.
Yeah, well, if we get a research paper on the providers out there, I think would be the best way forward on that. I definitely was informed because up until now we've been going to special schools and look at the transition processes and the problem parents were having, but that was definitely
most of the information we were actually getting from parents and schools have been fairly negative towards the type of training that thing, and this seems to be a move departure from what we've been told.
Okay. Members also note the committee had a very interesting visit to the North West Regional College on the 12th of November. The committee offered to host a supported learning showcase for the North West Regional College in the Long Gallery, which has been accepted. Members also tabled as correspondence from Belfast Met requesting that the committee host another supported learning event on Tuesday the 3rd of December 2015.
That should be November. That's right.
November. That should be November 2015. Do members agree that both the colleges host a joint event on the 3rd of November?
Yeah,
very good.
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
Okay, members. Members also note that I attended the now graduation event on Thursday the 13th of November, and it was a really good event, members, and actually their main sort of attraction was the band from Glenveigh School provided the entertainment, and as a school we'd visited as part of the inquiry. Members, I've asked if they would be able to perform on Tuesday the 9th of December from 12:30 to 1 o'clock, actually in the Great Hall. It will be our last sitting day before Christmas. And if members agree to sponsor the event, I'll write to the Principal Deputy Speaker requesting permission for the performance to take place.
Well, that's a great idea. Yeah.
That's an agreement?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, members. Members, just to advise as well that Belfast Rotary Club Technology Tournament was hosted by the committee yesterday and was a really good success, I think, for the members who went up in. The schools thoroughly enjoyed it anyway. Okay, members, draft minutes. Sorry.
I'll be brief. In relation to the informal meeting we had with the university sector, we really didn't have an opportunity to then brainstorm and have a look at areas where we could assist them on. Certainly one way we could do, and you as chair, could be issuing a press release encouraging the sectors to become involved in the consultation process, to have their voice be heard, whether it's in university, further education, or it's in the other sectors, because it's important that that be heard. and we should be giving consideration to what we previously done was a committee motion.
They weren't, the universities weren't overly enamoured with an idea of another showcase at that stage, Pat, so, but
I'm not
what,
talking about showcase, I'm talking about a motion.
a motion?
A motion.
We can go
Can we
back.
think about
We
it?
can go back and ask them if that's something they want to do, but as for the press release members, would you be content that
There's only
we would do
encouraging
that,
people.
we do that from the committee?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, members, moving on, draft minutes of our last meeting on the 22nd of October is at page 10. Members, do you agree those is a true record of the last meeting?
Great.
Great, thank you. I'll sign them in as being accurate. Members' matters arising, page 17. Members just agree action points as agreed as at page 17 or any other matters arising.
Yeah, great.
Content?
Yeah.
Members' correspondence, from, because we haven't had a formal meeting for the past 2 weeks, there's quite a bit of correspondence to go through, so as a page, from page 22 of your packs and also tabled. Members, page 38 is correspondence from the department to the Committee for Education regarding the shared and integrated education inquiry. Members, it's really how we as a committee wish to respond or interact with this inquiry.
I think we already agreed that we would just.
Members were content to leave it to education, the committee on education at this minute in time.
Yeah. Quarry.
Is there inquiry? Consent?
I never picked on it. What was it?
It's the Committee of Education's having an inquiry into shared and integrated education, and they've just written to us to see as the department's response to their inquiry. As if we want to get involved, are we content with the department's response to the committee?
It's just in case that at some stage Stranmore St Mary's
It's not that. I
might,
think that's the remit of the inquiry they're doing.
yeah.
Can we ask to
heard-
keep a watching brief on it, just in case it does
Okay.
become involved or become relevant to us?
That's fair enough.
Members content with that?
You know,
Okay. Members, also page 47 then is the departmental response to committee correspondence following the labour mobility research briefing. And that was the breakdown, was then provided of East West, all the rest of it I think was that.
Just in case.
That was requested, that was Bronwyn requested that, but I think she's aware of the correspondence.
you know,
Okay, members content to note. Page 62 is then correspondence from the ICTU requesting the opportunity to brief the committee on the review of employment law. It's not in front of us yet, members, so are members content to schedule a briefing when a paper on employment law review actually comes before the committee? They are, they're ahead of the game, but. Page 63 is correspondence from Unite the Union requesting a meeting with the committee regarding the budget cuts to higher education.
Yeah.
Members content maybe another informal briefing rather than a committee session?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, members, page 65 is the Assembly Research and Information Service research paper on Sweden's support for people with learning disabilities. I know, members, we had looked at Sweden possibly as a model of good practice, but the more I read the research paper, there's not a direct correlation or connect with anything we do here. You know, they have a good model, but their underpinning structures and everything else that they do is way ahead of us, so I don't think there's any relevance as to a visit or continuing the Swedish model any further.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Now that's a disappointment.
From what?
A trip to Sweden?
It would have been on, I think, when we initially looked at Sweden, we thought there was a direct correlation, but you know,
No, there's
a lot
no
of their
point.
underpinning legislation is more advanced than ours in regard to saying. Members, at page 91 is Assembly Research and Information Service research paper on kinship care in the UK and Republic of Ireland. Pat, that was something you'd requested?
Yeah,
Is there anything
I would
there?
be keen, Chair, that there is kinship care in Northern Ireland at some stage, maybe to get a briefing from them. Certainly not this year, but at some stage
Schedule
in
it
the
into a
future.
forward work
please,
programme.
yeah.
Yep. Members content?
Yep.
Okay, members, page 114 is correspondence from the Historical Royal Palaces offering to brief the committee on their new Clore Learning Centre. Members, if you remember, they had contacted all committees in regard to coming and brief us on the work they're doing. We'd asked for them to come. If they were going to come to us, it would have to be something directly to the committee.
Yeah.
The Clore Learning Centre to me seems to be the information centre for the castle, which actually doesn't have any direct relation to the committee, so we can tend to leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Members, on page 118 is the Assembly Research and Information Service research paper on public procurement, competitions and not-for-profit organisations, and current Cabinet Office proposals. Members can tend to discuss. I know Bronwyn has an issue she'd like to discuss on this, so if she's here later on, maybe under any other business, or if not, we'll come back to her next week on it. Okay. Members, page 145 is the departmental response to the Committee for Enterprise, Trade and Investment regarding SDC trailers. I think that was following the Deputy Committee had actually went out and visited there. Members, just on the correspondence or on the response that come back, would you be content to write to the Department for Information and why it has arranged 10 to 12 places for training welding staff, and SDC actually say they can take up to 20?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See why the mismatch is there. Okay, members. Members, page 147 is correspondence from the Confucius Institute at the Ulster University requesting to brief the committee on its work. Members content?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that?
Yeah.
Okay. Members, page 148 is the Assembly Research Service research paper on the productivity gap. Members, anything there are content to note?
Yeah, no.
Content? Okay. Members, page 217, departmental response to the committee request for further information following the Reading Partnership briefing on the Steps to Success programme. That was the specific queries we raised with Reid when they were in front of us.
No.
Content with those responses or anything else?
Yeah.
Wait till we see all, or have had feedback from all three providers and maybe correlate all the responses. Okay, members, page 399 of the correspondence is departmental response regarding the number of young people with disabilities in apprenticeship programmes. Okay, members, just I suppose to note is that there are 267 disabled participants on the programme, which represents just over 4% of the total occupancy. Would members be in agreement to write to the department and requesting that maybe provide this information by constituency, or just to break it down a wee bit more? Yeah.
Yeah.
Members, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, members, there are 10 invitations at page 400 and also tabled. Members, are you content to note there if there is any of those invitations that the committee are interested in attending? Can you let the clerk know? Okay, members, just agreed actions unless indications to the contrary. Thank you, members. Members, page 417 of your pack is the draft forward work programme up until the 10th of December. Can't review anything.
Just that we added in the minister for next week.
Yep. That is the only point to note, is the Minister will be in front of us next week in regard to the 15-16 budget. Members will be,
Report and legislative consent motion.
in addition to the draft report and the legislative consent motion on the pension schemes as well, will be next week.
3rd of December event, is that a long gallery event or is that
Mellon Country House in Oma.
Goma?
That's the first of our stakeholder events.
Very good.
When have we at the minute?
Quite a lot?
30 or
30,
something.
40. 40.
Very good.
40 events?
40 people.
40 people.
Which is important.
Coming from Oliver, we wrote to all 26 district councils, we wrote to all Health and Social Care Trusts, we wrote to the Health and
That's
Social
brilliant.
Care Board,
Good stuff.
plus all the stakeholders,
So what time are we starting that day?
10 o'clock.
It's just normal.
It's 10 o'clock with round tables. You are just sort of mingling. What we're going to have is 10, well, it might even be 8 tables. We're going to amalgamate a few, I think. And then we'll have key stakeholders at each of the table for each of the themes. And then we'll have a note taker at each table. And they will discuss the theme and then lunch. Then in the afternoon, we will meet as a committee properly. And we'll have Hansard there and we'll have doorkeepers. And each table will take it in turn to read into the record the conclusions and recommendations from each table. And then once one table is complete, there'll be a roving mic so other people can say things from the other tables if they wish. And then that's when the committee come in and talk as well.
Fran?
Just wondering, would it be beneficial if we were there 15, 20 minutes early, even to get the guys, so we just have a wee RD on,
Yep.
on
Sure.
what it is
How
we
the day's
expect
working.
out of it, you
Yep.
know.
I'll do that. Good
I
idea.
9:30 would be here.
Yep. Okay.
Registrations from 9:30 for the participants.
Yeah.
So I said for the committee, just meet sort of to have a briefing first of all.
Yeah, just have a wee.
Good idea. Okay. Okay, members, moving on then to our first briefing this morning is a departmental briefing on United Youth. Members, is page 419 of your briefing paper.
Good morning.
Morning. Could I just welcome Ms. Yvonne Krosky, Director of Youth Policy and Strategy Division, and Mr. Jim Russell, the Deputy Director. Just advise members, you just have 10 minutes, Yvonne, because we have quite
That's fine.
a busy day. So.
We passed
Over to
through,
yourself.
We passed through a slide
Yep,
pack,
I have those page 419 members.
and if it's okay with
420.
you, Chair, I'm going to very quickly outline where we are,
Yep.
and then Jim will talk a wee bit just about how we're going to progress matters, okay? So maybe just to set the scene, major commitment in the Northern Ireland Executive's Good Relations Strategy to get...
Frack and, sorry. No, sorry.
I could work previously on that too.
Call the try.
Sorry,
No,
Yvonne.
that's right. I think I think I would say.
Go ahead now, Chair.
Yeah, please. Yvonne.
Obviously, it aims to foster good relations amongst our young people and help develop a shared future. You all know that it was launched by the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister back in May. Really, just to set the scene, it outlines that there would be a United Youth programme aimed at young people 16 to 24-year-old group, and the purpose would be to build their capacity and prepare them for leadership and improve community relations. 3 overarching objectives, obviously, for the United Youth programme: building better community relations, creating better citizens, and giving employment experience and structured volunteering opportunities. We as a department assumed responsibility, as you know, for the design of the United Youth programme, and a co-design team was established, which comprises representatives from the public, private and the community and voluntary sectors. And young people have also been very much part of our co-design process. We have a set of draft outcomes contained within a framework for United Youth, which we recently published, and it was developed in conjunction with our stakeholders, including very much young people who have been really part of this from the beginning. The outcomes are expressed in capabilities that young people will have an opportunity to develop and enhance through their participation in the programme. Basically, the outcomes have been categorised into 4 main outcomes: social and emotional capabilities, positive participation in family and community society, capabilities contributing to good community relations, and capabilities relevant to employment. Further exploration of these outcomes have been undertaken and will be undertaken through the pilot phase that we're designing at the moment, which we hope to commence early in the new year. There's a set of delivery principles, and these again have been established to underpin the work of the pilots. We did have a call for proposals. We expect that as part of this process, we will be defining the task in terms of outcomes which will actually help young people to achieve a flexible, coherent and high-quality United Youth programme. We envisage that as a department we will develop the approach to unify all our young people through provision that is in a coherent framework and helps them to offer clear progression routes, adding key components on good relations and citizenship. I'm going to now hand over to Jim, if I may, and he's going to walk you through where we are at the minute in terms of co-design, if I may.
Okay. I think the co-design approach is one that we inherited really from OFM DFM. And really it's not our traditional way of doing business, shall we say, in the sense that what we normally do is we would design a programme, write a specification, and then go out to tender and ask people to tender against the specification to deliver the programme. The co-design approach is different. What it does is, rather than specifying a programme in detail, what it does is it looks at what are we trying to achieve in terms of outcomes. And rather than tell our provider base, this is what we want you to do, we say to them, this is what we want you to achieve. How you go about that really is down to you. All we will want to do is measure the outcomes that you deliver through your approach. And what we also want to do is to find out from that process what are the range of approaches that are out there that might work, and learn from any pilot testing that we would do to inform any spec for a programme in the future. So rather than jumping to the answer, we're trying to work with people to find out what the potential answers might be. So as Yvonne has said, the first step there was to establish a co-design team. And in that co-design team we have reps from Dell, from OFM DFM, from DSD, we have the Youth Council, we have DE, we have the Public Health Agency, and I think it's YouthNet we have in the group as well. And their task in the summer months was to look at the outcomes framework. In other words, what will the programme want to achieve? And they're summarised, I think, on the outcomes slide, which is this one here. And these
426 members.
this work is based on work that has been done, research work that has been done by other organisations like the Young Foundation, the Youth Council for Northern Ireland, and it has been formed by some of the other work that has been done via the Head Start programme that was delivered by OFM DFM as an early pilot for United Youth. So it's based on evidence that has been gathered and work that's been done before. We drafted these up, the group liked them, and then we consulted on them with the potential provider base during the summer. And as a result of that feedback that we got from that consultation, we have tightened these up a bit, and what we have here are the agreed outcomes for the specification. So these are the things that we will want people to deliver when they begin to pilot the exercise. At the same time as looking at what the outcomes might be, we also looked at some of the principles that we would want to operate within this programme. We've always said that this was a youth development programme, that the voice of young people and its development was very important, and that young people should be at the centre of it. So you'll also see in the slide pack that we agreed a series of 8 principles that we would expect any provider to adhere to in the delivery of the programme. So what we then did was we took the principles and we took the outcomes, and we asked anyone who was interested, either as an individual organisation or as a consortium, whatever, to present their thoughts on how they would deliver against these outcomes and these principles. We had a lot of interest in that. We had 158 proposals, which the design group then assessed against the outcomes and the principles and other aspects of what we wanted people to do. And that is where we've got to in the process. We need to take decisions now on, of that 158, how many do we want to take forward to develop in full a proposal for us. And we think there may be perhaps 30, 31 organisations that we would take to the next stage, do a full proposal development, then assess that and choose from that group a number that we would take to a full pilot. But it's important to know in this process that if you've engaged with us from the beginning, you remain engaged with us throughout, so we don't leave behind the 120 odd who we don't take to the next part of the process. We keep them in the process. We continue a dialogue with them because there were parts of what they had proposed, there were bits of what they had said to us were good. We want to lose good learning. But we want to test some ideas to ensure that we see, yes, when you put this into practice, it really does deliver what we expect it to. And so there's no, if you like, there's no fixed outcome with this so far. We are trying to learn as we go from the work that people have done, from the work that people will do, either in developing a full pilot proposal or actually delivering that pilot at a later stage. We take all that learning, we analyse it all, we evaluate it all, and we produce, at the end of the pilot phase, a specification or specifications, because we might want to do different things and buy different solutions in different places or different approaches for different things. And then we would go out to a procurement that will buy a United Youth programme that will work for the whole of Northern Ireland, in every part, urban, rural, for all young people. I mean, what we also have seen in some of the proposals we've got, people have come forward with ideas, not just for what you'd be regarded as the normal disengaged young people, who we have proposals in for dealing with young people with disability or homeless young people. The full range is there. When we went out to consult about this, we threw the door wide open and we asked people to cover the full range of need that they could see in their community or the area that they delivered in. So what we hope to do is take some of these through to a detailed proposal stage and then begin to pilot before the end of this financial year and finish those pilots next year. Extract the learning and be in a position to go out to put the full programme in place maybe from 2016.
Thanks, Jim. Yvonne,
No, I think at this stage we're happy maybe to take
some questions on the details.
Okay. Jim, just like, Yvonne, just like you both know, this has been covered by Hansard, although they're not here, they will be producing a written transcript just to make you aware of that. Moving from 158 down to a possible 6 or 10 projects, who's involved in that decision-making process or
Design team.
design team, who are made up of?
Dell, OFM, DFM, DSD, Youth Council, DE, Public Health Agency, YouthNet.
Organisations not involved in who aren't bidding, obviously.
Right.
Or aren't-
Deliverers.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're not involved in putting forward proposals themselves.
Okay. So, of the 6 or 10 that we finish with in January, at this stage, have you any concept as to what they will be doing or how, you know, what are their programmes going to look like? Or
In fairness, where we are at the moment, we are awaiting some clarity. The programme runs over 2 financial years, and while we have sufficient money set aside for this year, we're just seeking clarity on next year so that we can. So at the minute, we're just holding off until we get clarity. We're looking at the funding from Delivering Social Change or the Change Fund to support the. It runs from January, but it runs right through into the next financial year, which is 15-16, and we just can't go any further until we get clarity, and we expect that to happen imminently. We're in discussions about it.
Yeah, I think in terms of what we received by way of proposal, as I said, we haven't spec'd what we want. We have asked people to tell us what they would do, and we have a huge range of different approaches that have been proposed. Some, for example, their proposal is to be, if you like, a coordinating body that will help young people connect with services and provision which already exists in you know, FE or schools or in the voluntary and community sector. Others are looking at dealing with a very small number of young people with very particular needs to help progress them. So that's what we want. We don't want a single
One size
approach.
fits all.
We want to test a wide range of approaches to see what does this teach us, because we do not think that when we finish this, it says on the slides what will it look like. we will not know what it will look like until this is finished. It could be different things. There could be more than one answer here. And if that's what we need, then that's what we will do. But I couldn't say at this moment in time precisely what the approach will be until we have completed this process.
And we're sitting at the minute with our co-design, and there are 31 very diverse, very different interventions to help deliver the outcomes and the principles that we aspire to, which we have very clearly set and outlined to you today, and which were provided for all those who indicated an interest and put forward proposals. So they're all very different. There's no each one is taking a very different approach to deliver our outcomes.
The other thing we have is that we have got a number of proposals that are what we call youth-led. So it's the young people themselves that are trying to build the programme with a bit of help and support from others. What we would like to do, I mean, it's hard to explain this, but if we had a number of these pilots on the ground and operational, it would be good to actually go and see them, because they will all be different. There'll be a whole range of different approaches. As I say, we're not precious about what the approach is. All that we're concerned about is that it delivers the outcomes that the design team have agreed, or the outcomes we want to achieve.
The process, I'm trying to get my head around, sounds very much like OFM, DFM, SIF fund, and the approach taken there. Would that be?
And I'm not up to.
We're not familiar necessarily with the SIF approach, but certainly we inherited this approach from OFM, DFM. What we did, I think, is we tied it down into a more controlled process, if you like, in terms of having a design team that consisted of all of the possible organisations that would have an interest in seeing this work, and getting their input in terms of, well, what do you want to see by way of outcomes, and then putting that challenge out to as wide a provider base as we can to see, well, how would you do this? If you had a clean sheet, how would you deliver these outcomes for us? We haven't even given people an indication of, oh, by the way, it should cost X, because if you say it'll cost X, you will get X's worth. So the costs of these are varied as well. Some people are saying it will cost, hundreds of thousands of pounds. Other people are saying it will only cost tens of thousands of pounds. So what works? We worry about the cost later.
We're about the outcomes, and unlike normal, we haven't went out and like a normal bid and prescribed numbers, and we're really looking at our activities. We're looking at how can you demonstrate that you can deliver the outcomes we want to see, which are the changes we want to see that young people will have experienced as a result of participating in the programme, which means that it opens up the whole concept to innovation, brand new thinking. And when you start to prescribe what you want, people will give you a diet of what you want, whereas we really want to see outcomes being delivered that change young people's lives.
And the outcome slide is the key to this. This is the heart of where we have got to.
What's that one, Jim?
Which number is that, sorry?
426.
Yeah. This is at the heart of it. This is where, as I say, we got the personal and related capabilities. We did some research and we looked at what other thinkers and organisations that were interested in this field had come up with. We considered those as a design group, and there was some drafting around it. Then we put it out to consultation with the potential providers and the young people, and some interesting stuff come up in that consultation. For example, if you look at the good relations one there, it was the young people themselves that said to us, look, be upfront about this, don't pussyfoot around it, stick it up there at the top line, addressing community division, sectarianism, racism. They wanted to see those in there. We didn't go that far, but young people were quite keen to tackle this head on, don't be afraid of it. Also in the employability, we weren't too hot on the idea of qualifications within this programme, but again, as a result of the consultation, again particularly with young people, they wanted to see that in there. Young people value qualifications, so they do. So they wanted to see that in the capabilities as well. So what we have here, really we think is a very strong set of personal related capabilities that we want the programme to deliver. The challenge and the test for the provider is, how do you do that? What do you do with me or Yvonne that makes the difference for us? And not only does it make a difference while I'm in the programme, but it sticks with me when I've left the programme, and that I'm able to progress and move on into work or into further training, or that I'm working in my community, or that I'm volunteering with an organisation. The other side of the slide there, and using the capabilities, those are sort of some descriptors of the types of things the types of hard evidence we'd like to see, emerging from the work. That people are engaged, they're active in a positive way against these capabilities. They're using those capabilities positively.
Okay. I think the more I listen to it, the more as a SIF-based approach, and could I just ask you to contact and work with OFM, DFM, because of as a similar model, they've been through this for the past 18 months, and there was a lot of problems encountered by consultants, procurement, and the big problem, and what worries me here, just listening to some of that, is that fact of duplication. If you're talking about creating a hub to signpost young people, I'm just concerned that there's not already maybe an organisation out there that could be already doing it.
Well, if I could take that, please. Firstly, I'd like to give you the committee assurance today that we actually are in a project. The project has been overseen by a project board which includes OFM, DFM representative officials to make sure that doesn't happen. And likewise, we see United Youth as a wraparound so that we utilise our new youth training system that was announced by our Minister yesterday, so that it does wrap round and it looks at where there's complementarity, and it does signpost where we have existing provision that we don't replicate. And we've been working very hard on that to make sure that doesn't happen. So I can give you that assurance now. We actually have a number of senior representatives from OFM, DFM on our project board to ensure that we learn from their process, and that likewise for the range of offering that we have for young people at the higher levels, that this is a wraparound. United Youth is a wraparound to bring all this together and bring the additionality in terms of the volunteering, citizenship and the good relations. But where the young person is ready, obviously we will be wanting to see them signposted over into the youth training system and other programmes that we have for employability.
And part of the process in considering those 158 was to check the application, that we weren't actually taking forward things that were already happening.
Okay. Fran?
Chair, thanks for the presentation. I'll have to say that just reading through the report that we have this morning, that it's fairly intensive. There's quite a lot of stuff in it. There seems to be something for everybody and everything that is in it, and if it works well and good, As I'm just looking at the good relations, addressing community division, sectarianism, racism, and contributing to reconciliation, that in itself is a huge piece of work. And where I would be a bit concerned is that we don't go down the road that has already been, and that is the community relations type approach that has been done in the past, which totally bypassed where some of the worst excesses of division, sectarianism and racism exist. I think that it needs to get to the cold faces, it needs to deal with the groups that are dealing with it. And I think when you talk about a wraparound approach, you're talking about pulling the strings together of all other organisations that are and tapping into that to allow them the thing. Because I do still think that, and the chair raised it, I do still think that there may be a problem of what people understand maybe there and that thing, because when you look at it, it does cover everything, and it may be just too much to deal with. I think it'd be interesting to find out where the final pilots come in, how they will operate, the geographical spread of the pilots, what is expected of them. And one of the concerns that I would have in just picking up, because I know both of you have talked about the other departments, and it just throws me back to neighbourhood renewal. Neighbourhood renewal as a concept was excellent, and it promised so much, but it fell apart. Not more so by the leading department, which was DSD at the time, but the lack of interest by all the other departments. And when you looked at, they met once a year to sit and look at it at most of the part of the thing, and that there needs to be a buy-in from everybody if this is to work. And that is not only having meetings about it, with other departments bringing the resources to the table that will allow the thing to flourish. So the other question would be, and what resources are available to the department, saying that may be that they're the lead delivery mechanism. And I would also be a bit concerned because whilst you're talking about that for the first year, that resources are made available, the second year that you're still waiting on word coming through on whether the resources will be available to deliver it, and will it be caught up in what people expect is the normal round of cuts. I have to say that, and I've had a scepticism about it from the start, but I think what we all need to do, it's out there, that there are people who have already started to ban it, and what we all need to do is throw our weight behind it to ensure that it's successful.
For the joined up issue, I can give assurance that it's not just lip service. Our actual co-design concept has the buy-in of all the key players and will continue to have, because this won't work without them. Also, I would like to give assurance that obviously in the very restrictive budgetary climate we find ourselves in, there's no room or no scope anymore to avoid joining up and making sure that the whole thing is coherent, and that those that deliver a pilot, that it's all about working through co-design to make sure we utilise what's already there right across a range of expertise. And with regard to the finances, we expect to have those resolved quite soon, as I understand it. We're just seeking clarity in terms of we've enough to start the pilots, but we need to have sufficient funding, as I said, to go forward for next year. And we are liaising with our colleagues in OFM, DFM at the minute at two options there. One is delivering social change, and the other one is the.
What's the allocation for the first year?
We have £1 million
Pounds.
this
Sorry,
year.
£500,000.
1 million this year.
1 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we could start in the new year. We could.
And the geographical spread?
Spread
across,
absolutely across the country. That's one of the things that we need to ensure, urban, rural. The 158 were very sort of, majority really were in the east and around Belfast. But we do have proposals in Derry and in the country as well, and we'll try to make sure that we cover the full range.
And testing different approaches with different, obviously there will be some differences between some of the rural settings and some of the issues there. So this will be right across geographically all of Northern Ireland, and looking at different approaches to suit different, particularly interface areas, and making sure that one size doesn't fit all.
I think you make a fair point for about the size of this. You know, it might be too big. It might have to be, once we do it, we might have to break it into smaller bits and deal with it that way. But we'll work through it with the providers and see what the learning is. I mean, I think when we do get started, and we have 6 to 10 on the ground, it would be worth coming to see the range and see what's going on out there, because there are a lot of good ideas. There are, and you know, people have stepped up to the challenge, I think, and really are keen to try and do something different and make it work. But it's, you know, it's hard to sit here and talk about it in theory. We'd like to see it happen in practice so that people can see this is what it means, this is what we're doing to try and make this happen.
Just one final point on it. It goes back to the geographical spread, and I suspected when I was looking at it that a lot of the interest would come from the urban areas, and it's important, I think, as in all things, that it's not just urban, that there has to be a rural approach to this also.
Yeah.
And there most definitely will be, although having said that, we obviously don't want to compromise the process either, but be assured that it is looking at
And again, the learning might be that what works in the city doesn't work in the country, and what works in one part of the city doesn't work in another part. What's the solution here? And the solutions could be very, very localised, very specific to a particular area.
and
that's
very
fine.
different, and
Yeah.
very different as well.
Okay, thanks for that. Anna?
Thank you, Chair. This is first time I look at the details, and like Fra, I certainly was very much involved in the neighbourhood renewal. My worry about this is just so big and you cover so many areas. God help you. You could land it with it. But the problem with neighbourhood renewal, you know, apart from what Fra said about different government departments not buying in, it's also, it became a wish list by community groups because, again, it covered all aspects of their lives, education, housing, everything. And it really raised a lot of false hopes and expectations. And in the end, people got very disillusioned. Fra probably agree with me. I was the chair of the South Belfast Partnership at the time, and we spent an awful lot of money and time, public money, and time to work up the programme, the plans, and in the end, so few items identified there were ever met. And I just worried about this being the be-all and end-all, this massive big piece of work, and you end up being a talking shop.
From our perspective, this has been driven by Together Building a United Community, which has been driven at the very heart of the executive, and this is just one component of that. And we're meeting at a very strategic level, and the whole of government is bought into this concept. We are just one arm. The United Youth is one part of this programme, looking at this specific outputs for young people. And we know we have that buy-in, we have that commitment in our project board, and we have the comfort of knowing that our partners are actually contributing to this aspect. And it's all about joining the whole lot up, that we don't allow United Youth to replicate what really good practice we have there, that it becomes this wraparound, so that with additionality comes along in terms of the citizenship and the good relations and the new innovative employability concepts and ideas.
Yeah, so we do also have to report to the Good Relations Programme Board as well, as one of the 7 headline initiatives. So I think the pressure will be on us to deliver from that perspective. Again, just going back to the previous point, yeah, this might be too big. The learning may be that you need to break this into smaller components. That may be the learning that comes out of it. But as I say, we're not entering into this with any preconceived ideas of what the outcome will be. We will learn from the work we will do in the pilots, what may or may not work, and build on that. I mean, to sit down and to spec a programme of this scale and to procure it would have cost us millions upon millions of pounds. And there's a huge risk that it may not deliver, that it may fall apart, just like neighbourhood renewal did.
Yeah.
We need to be sure before we go to that type of scale that what we have has a chance of working.
So the budget at the moment is £1 million. Is it to set up the pilots,
We have sufficient funding to fund the aspects of the pilots up until the 31st of March, but thereafter the pilots are running over a period up to 12 months.
Yeah, up to a year, maybe
and
longer.
we're seeking to secure sufficient funding so that we can launch the pilots and they can run in their totality right across the 2 financial years.
from April
From April,
2015?
well, we would see the concepts being going forward, Jim, from early New Year.
If we start in January, February, we would run the pilots right through to the end of
The year.
Now, again,
The end of the financial year.
end of the calendar year.
Okay.
Now,
Okay.
the other thing I should say is some of the proposals are only for 3 or 6 months. Some of them are for 2 years. Again, when we went out with this approach, we didn't specify that it has to be done in a year, so we left it to the people to tell us this is how we will do this. So whilst some may complete early, others may take a bit longer. We will deal with that when we get to the stage where we are ready to run with the 6 or 10 that we think we want to trial.
How many staff and how many people have you in the department to monitor all this? Plus working with the 158 other proposals, or 120 and you know, that are not selected.
Excluding Eva and myself, we have about 8.
About 8 people.
Yeah. Plus, but you have to remember we have input from DSD, from DE, from the Youth Council, from public, all of those other people who are on the design team. They have been very, I mean, it's really a lot of their expertise that has got us to where we are at the moment. So we do have that buy-in from others,
And I
that
suppose
commitment from them.
we need to bear in mind that we'll be running between 6 and 8 pilots, which is manageable, and we can monitor closely and see the results coming forward for the pilots. But and as I say, they're running over. We need money to run for the 2 financial years, and we understand that should be clarified quite soon.
Okay, thanks, Anna.
Okay,
Pat?
thank you.
Good morning, you're very welcome. I'm just concerned that we are replicating and we're going to demolish some of the other good projects and programmes that we have. And I note the language that even Jim and yourself are using. You seem to be very apprehensive and nervous about this and where it's actually going to go, which does give me grave concern. Talking directly on questions, the Pathways to Success model, there was clearly objective need in it, which focused on the needs categories. You know, is the needs category still going to be the fundamental priority within this programme?
Initially, to commence with, we're focusing on that core.
Initially, you said.
Well, as part of our pilots, yes.
Yeah.
The ultimate vision is to make it available to all young people in the target age group, which is present time 16 to 24. But we think that by taking this approach and finding or trying to find the approach that will engage young people, that will work for everyone. So if we're able to ensure that we can engage the young people who are furthest from any of this work at all, then those lessons will not be lost on people who are closer to engagement or who already are engaged in some way, but could be, for example, engaged in other aspects of it. Young people who are in training, for example, or in school may benefit from doing working around good relations or volunteering. That we'd want to expand that out to them as well.
And that's what the wraparound would be, that this is the additionality, that once we test the concepts and we are clear on the results of the outcomes, focusing on this very tight group of neat young people, that the learning for that can then be used to look at how we would offer that to a wider range of our young people right across our programmes.
So if we're focusing on then accepting in good faith, what you're saying is it is aimed at the most vulnerable.
Yes.
One of the questions I asked the Minister was a follow-on from what the Chair's question in the Chamber was, that those young people who, for example, don't leave school with any level of qualifications at level 1, trying to move on to level 2, at the minute there is a requirement that they have 5 GCSEs. So how are you going to achieve that in circumstances of progression when the most vulnerable out there, coming out of care, coming out of estranged families, are just not having a good educational background? How are you going to achieve that?
Well, we're talking about yesterday's youth training system launch. We know that young people leaving school at the minute, that the statistics shows from the Department of Education that around 88% are leaving with what we call a level 1 qualification, which leaves us in around about 11 or 12% of young people, as you say, that don't have the qualification, and we will be working to ensure that those young people are offered level 1 provision to allow them to move seamlessly into a level 2 training. And you know that we are also looking as well at a strategy going forward, an employment and skills strategy, a disability strategy, to really look at offering a wide range of support to those young people to help them make it the transition into level 2. So we'll be working hard with that, but that is still going to be a challenge for us, but we don't see it as insurmountable.
Yvonne, then, saying you've identified almost 11% of young people who may not it may not be possible to go to level 2. We have established that figure. As part of this programme, will you be identifying projects coming forward who you're looking specifically at that grouping to progress a programme? Because what does concern me, Chair, you know, and I've met a number of groups who've made application of the 158, and there's a feeling out there, there's an opportunity here for us all to make a difference in their communities, whether it's learning disabilities, whether it's disabilities, or whether it's pure youth training. There's going to be a fierce amount of people disappointed.
Well, some of the pilots are actually looking at this group of young people with some very innovative ideas to deliver the outcomes. So we know that we have a number of projects that have been submitted and are under consideration to deal with this very issue as part of this programme.
Yeah, look, I'm finishing. Could we absolutely ensure one of the key recommendations coming out of the NEED strategy was the importance of ensuring that the progression of a young person's tracking where they're progressing to. Can we have an absolute assurance that that is in place, will continuously be in place, and it has been monitored?
Well, we will check up on that and take that back to the department with my colleague Colin Jack. With regard to United Youth, we will definitely have a tracking system in place. In fact, we have some conceptual thoughts around that already at the moment of how we might do that.
But and just finally, the finance is one, because it does concern me that this has appearance of a good project, but I think you're talking about an exit strategy next year before you can progress on the second or third year. No. The language that you're using here today. But I'm going to leave it, Chair, because there's other people trying to come on.
Deputy Chair Tom.
Thank you, Chair. Have you any idea how many young people you think will anticipate in these programmes, take part in them? How many are you hoping to target in this?
United Youth has set us a target of 10,000 young people. That's what we've been.
And we expect to pilot with about 300
to start with.
We think 300 is enough to.
And you're talking about 6 to 10 pilots. I take it these are going to be run by 6 to 10 different providers.
Yes.
Right. Does each provider have to in the programmes tie in all of these 4 issues that's tied in with the personal and related capabilities that you have in here?
Absolutely, yep.
Have to tie in all of it. And again, you know, the outcomes and how you measure the outcomes and the benefit there's going to be, as it will be already spoken about. Those are one of the concerns that we have, because obviously, you know, it's all right putting in place all of these programmes, and this is a huge, I mean, when we go through this here, there's a huge amount of stuff that's tied into here. And my concern is at the end of that programme is what the benefit is going to be to the young person.
Yeah.
What is the benefit really going to be? And we're sitting here this morning, we don't know what that is. We're not really getting a clear message as to, look, this is going to benefit so many young people in this way, it's going to benefit others in other ways, and we're talking about the 5 GCSEs that they're going to try and bring them into one you know, one programme or one level or whatever, as the Minister spoke about yesterday. But, you know, it's all right talking about that, but it's really getting something in place that's really going to deliver that outcome. And when I'm listening to you this morning and hearing and listening from you folk, I'm not really getting a clear indication that we're going to be getting this delivery, that we're going to be, at the end of this programme and the end of these pilots, that we're going to see the fruit of the labour of this programme. And that's the concern that I have, because, you know, if we're putting out, as a department, and we're putting out a new programme or something, we want to be sure that we're going to see the fruit of the labour of what has been done.
Yeah.
I'm not getting a clear indication that that's what we're going to be seeing.
This is a good relations programme, and I would like to emphasise that. I think it's important that we bring that out, Jim. This is a good relations programme, and the fruits of our labours will be seen longitudinally in terms of young people and their behaviours with their family and in the community setting. That's ultimately, that is the linchpin that drives this programme. We're starting with 300 young people with a view to rolling the programme out, but we want to get it right. That's why we're looking at the smaller cohort, and we're focusing on each to begin with. Yeah. Once we get the learning from that, then we go forward with the next stage, which is a fulsome procurement. But we have to learn from a range of innovative ideas. We don't have one solution that fits all and will solve this, and that's why we're starting at the small scale with the 300, piloting them, moving forward to 10,000. But it is an overarching good relations programme. That's fundamentally what United Youth is about and its focus.
But
We might.
You're right. We could run pilots for the next year, and none of them could work. But if we do that, then our investment will be of the order of a small amount of money. We could create a programme now, today, as I said before, that could cost us many millions of pounds, and we wouldn't know whether it would work either. The whole point of taking this approach is you test at a small scale to see what are the things that deliver against these capabilities, and how can we show on the other side of the page that young people are positively engaged in that whole range of things. What have they done? What are they doing? Where are they going to? And not only where are they going to when the programme ends, but where are they in a year after that, or 6 months after that, and so on and so forth. So we keep young people engaged in the long term, which is coming back to Pat's point about tracking and monitoring to make sure that it has stuck and that people are progressing, and that you haven't wasted that investment, or something hasn't happened to them that has knocked them off track again, and you need to do a bit of work to get them back on stream again. So it is a big challenge. There's a lot to learn here, but what we think is that we have got enough good ideas coming forward that will allow us to find some of the answers that will allow us to deliver the outcomes that will stick long term. And that's why it's important to think that we get this work started, that we roll it, and we see how it works. Because I think when you see how it works and begin to see what emerges from it, you'll see what the picture will be. But it is a bit vague at the minute. It's fair to say that, yeah.
And once we've decided on the pilot concepts, we'll be able to come back and actually hear what they're going to deliver,
Yeah.
and how they're going to deliver our outcomes and the behavioural changes we want to see in society. And maybe just to refocus, it's all about supporting young people to learn new skills, to build robust community bonds in their community, to divert people into more constructive activity, to give them training experience to improve their CV and get them into work. Ultimately, those are the things we will see as the behaviours that will flow from this. But it's not a short-term programme. It definitely isn't. This is a longitudinal programme where the behaviours we will see the changes over the next 10, even 15 years in Northern Ireland. And it really is about trying a range of different innovative approaches to deliver the outcomes we want to see in society.
And just one other thing, you're commencing with 300 people in January, or the beginning.
300 young people, yes.
300 young people. When would you anticipate you'll have the 10,000 brought into the programme?
We would be looking to go forward once the pilots have ended. During that, we will be evaluating those pilots with a view to going forward in the following financial year, Jim?
Yeah.
16, 17?
16, 17. Whether we get this 10,000 then, or whether it's 10,000 over 3 years, is still to be. But as I say, the number was. It's in the TBUC strategy. It has been given to us. Part of the task will be to find out, well, how quickly can you deliver this? How can you build it? There is a lot of enthusiasm for this amongst those who are engaged in the design team and amongst the provider base. They really do like the approach that we have taken. But, I mean, and we want to bring everybody with us in this process so that we all learn, and come the day when we have to put in place provision right across the country for thousands of young people, that everybody knows exactly what it is expected of them, and that they're able to bid in any procurement competition with confidence and be sure that they're doing what we want them to do. There's work to be done.
Okay. Jim, move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, members. Okay, members, moving on then. Our next briefing is 0 hours. Sorry, I stepped ahead. Members, sorry, our next briefing is Step to Success, the contract with EOS. Members, just remind again, Hansard will be recovering this remotely. From your committee packs, page 438 is the raised briefing on contracted companies. 451, departmental correspondence, information and steps to success. Page 456 will be the EOS briefing paper for steps to success. And at page 21 is the departmental response to queries raised during the reading programme. So members, can I just welcome along Ms Tina McKenzie, the Managing Director of EOSNI, Mr Stephen Bell, Director of Policy and Communications, EOSNI, and Mrs Katrina Hifney, NI Contracts Manager for EOSNI. Folks, you are very welcome this morning. So,
Thank you.
Tina, format 10 minutes briefing from yourselves and then questions from members, okay?
Super, okay.
So over to you.
Good morning, everyone. You should have in front of you a presentation, about 8 or 9 slides.
Members 4, 5, 6, thanks.
I'm going to talk you through the slides alongside my colleagues, and then we're going to be open for questions. So the Staffline Group is a UK-based company, and it has a plethora of companies within the group, primarily focused on people, skills and jobs. We are number 1 in on-site managed services for the food, logistics and manufacturing sector of the UK. We're also number 3 within the welfare space. We also work within justice, and we also work within training, and specifically with online training tools as well. So we're a wide group. Our operations are mainly focused in GB and Ireland, although we do have operations in the Middle East and also in Poland, where we followed one of our top retail customers because they needed our solution in that country. That's a little bit about the group. In terms of actual steps to success, in terms of the breakdown of what we do within Welfare to Work, we have 4 programmes across GB, and I'm just going to give you the details of those. They're in South East, there we go, Midlands, North West and North East, and we're proud to say that this is our 5th work programme in Northern Ireland. We also have Support for Families, which is the European Social Fund that we run, and also enterprise contracts and the National Skills Funding Agency programmes. And more recently, we've opened one of our innovative centres in East Anglia, where we have worked with a charity, Tomorrow's People, to deliver youth unemployment solutions in an innovative way to that region, which is being received very enthusiastically with the local authorities. And as I said, most recently we are contracting with Ministry of Justice for that contract. So the group is a wide group, and it goes across employment, training and welfare. In terms of steps to success, we expect to welcome 25,000 to 30,000 people over the 4 years for the Northern region. Our doors opened on the 20th of October with 2 main sites, one in Mollusk in Newtonabbey and one in Patrick Street, the City Factory, in Derry. We expect as a group to cover 42% direct supply, and we will be outsourcing 58% to our supply chain to ensure that we're using the local suppliers in the particular smaller areas. In terms of the structure of our business, I'm the Managing Director. I'm also the Group Country Director. The Staffline Group made a commitment to the region long before we pitched for this particular programme. We introduced the Staffline Group 2 years ago with an investment in the province of £350,000 in salaries. We also opened our doors in the Republic of Ireland at the same time. The majority of the group's business is in GB, but we've definitely got a strategic objective between now and 2020 to grow our business across the island of Ireland. I'm the Managing Director of EOSNI, and we specifically set up EOSNI when we won the bid as a company in Northern Ireland, so it's a registered Northern Irish company, and we specifically appointed a Northern Irish person to run the bid because we thought it was very important to have a local understanding of the region. I'm going to now pass you to my colleague, Katrina Hifney, who is the Contract Manager for EOSNI.
Okay, thanks, Tina. The Steps to Success programme offers an excellent foundation for developing a new Northern Ireland company, EOSNI. The structure reflects our priorities in supporting participants to work, quality and performance management, and building long-term relationships with local employers and stakeholders. At full capacity, we will have a team of 137 people covering the Northern Area contract, and that includes our supply chain. 72 of those people will belong to EOS NI. The structure will be 6 senior managers, 47 people working directly with participants on a daily basis, 4 people proactively building those relationships with local employers, and 15 business support people, 3 of which will be based in GB. 36 people transferred through the TUPE process to work with us in the Steps to Success programme. 16 of those people joined EOS NI, and 20 of those people joined our supply chain partners, namely Network Personnel and L Enterprises. We aim to have the 72 people in place at the full capacity by Christmas. We recognise the challenges of Steps to Success. In developing our model, we had the opportunity to take 5 years of learning from our colleagues in EOS GB and begin to build on that to meet the needs of local participants and local employers, local commissioner and local partner organisation. EOS NI is anchored in a work-first approach. In terms of those headlines and the challenges that face us, 50% of participants are long-term unemployed, and long-term is over 2 years. 18% of the participants are 18 to 24 in the young people category. We're very lucky to have a region of highly skilled individuals and graduates. The challenge is to be able to match them equally to jobs that suit. And our rural geography requires a flexible approach. Accessibility is key to engagement. In terms of how we are addressing some of those challenges, where we have set up our centres, one in Foyle and one in Newtownabbey, it reflects very much so the population density in terms of building those real skills to meet the needs of local employers. Our understanding of the local market and our ability to build those relationships with key employers is absolutely critical to the success. Our delivery centres across the supply chain and EOS NI are linked closely with the Jobs and Benefits Office, and where there is a requirement for outreach, we provide that to ensure ease of accessibility and engagement. And again, in terms of the rural areas and covering the contract law, we ensure that the critical area of self-employment is covered by supply chain partners. I'm going to pass to Stephen, who's going to talk a little bit about our model.
So first of all, to talk a little bit about our employment training centres, we call them ETCs. As Tina mentioned, as she opened today, we've set up 2 ETCs, one on the Mulluss Road in Newtownabbey and one on Patrick Street in Foyle, which is the old city factory. In total, around about 37,000 square foot of space when you combine the 2 sites together. Overall, the level of investment is around about £1.2 million worth of capital investment just to set the sites up and to get going. The sites were originally a Dutch concept back in 2009. EOS, we were trading as 4-star at the time, set up 3 employment training centres in the West Midlands under the former Labour government's Flexible New Deal delivery. We then opened up another ETC in 2011. And Tina mentioned we've opened a youth ETC in the east of England just very recently. So the 2 new centres in Northern Ireland are our newest, and we're very, very proud of them so far. It's our belief that our model works. The practical training, the vocational experience that we can provide on site, we believe is critical to our success. The operating environments within our centres are task-led and work-focused. Vocational training and real work experience, again, is critical and underpins part of our core delivery. One of the things we do differently, we think, is we have host employers within our site. So it's not just about simulating a working environment or creating a vocational curriculum, for example. We also invite employers to expand their capacity. A great example is in our Newton Abbey site. So we have sort of an L-shaped warehouse at the back of the property, where we also have forklift trucks, counterbalance and reach forklift trucks, and we are working with an employer now who has expanded their operations. They'll be bringing their operations into our site, so our participants get to have experience with real work, and ultimately they become more competitive in the labour market. So when faced with that interview for the jobs that we'll present with them, they'll be more competitive, and they stand a much better chance of being successful. Our ETCs also operate as community hubs. So we don't just focus on our own delivery within our sites. We have a number of organisations that we contract with, whereby they support us with providing specialist and bespoke interventions. Organisations like the Citizens Advice Bureau, Addictions NI, and NIACRO, just as a few examples. What we do here is, instead of signposting our customers to different offices across the region, is we bring these organisations in-house, so everything operates all under one roof. So within our hubs, within our ETCs, we've got employers. Our doors are open to Jobs and Benefit Office staff and colleagues from the department, our employers, as well as our specialist organisations. And complementing all of that, we have our internal delivery. So on any given day, there is a running series of workshops, training and support sessions, some in group format, some in a one-to-one capacity, that offers employability, soft skills, and support for essential skills. So in terms of the participant journey and how we saw this working in a Steps to Success context, we start very much with our initial engagement. So our referrals are received from the Jobs and Benefit offices. There's a link with the IT systems, so it's really great that we've got a bit of a pen picture on the participant referral before we've even met the person. So that gives us personal information, but also a bit of history and a few notes from the employment advisor at the Jobs and Benefit office. The first thing that we do is we make contact with the participant by phone. And that's really just to try and understand where home is and where the most appropriate support venue is for that particular participant. So just to bear in mind that, again, their travelling times, but also any other known aspirations that we know about on day one. A great example of that is if there is an aspiration to perhaps progress a self-employment route. It's really great that we know that up front, because we can make sure that our participants are referred through to the most appropriate place from the very get-go. So if fast forwarding from that, what happens as a result of that phone call, and we've agreed then on our appointment time. So we agree that with the participant, and we'll agree on a venue and a time, etc., to meet with that person face to face. We don't do any type of group inductions or en masse inductions, etc. Everybody that we meet is met on a one-to-one basis in a private setting. So that we can really take a look at past and present, and then take a look at the future and start to agree and plan our next steps. So there's a degree of, initial assessment there, where we've got a bespoke assessment that we've designed for this programme, that helps us to understand how we can plot those next steps in for the short and medium term, and that's done with agreement with the participant. We've tried to make that process as paperless as possible as well, so that we can spend more of our time talking and listening as opposed to filling out documents, etc. So we find that that's really, really helpful, especially for our first engagement. So an output from that initial engagement is that we've started then to build a bit of a plan that looks at the short and medium term with agreement with the participants, so that we're both on the same page and we know what next steps that we're going to be taking. I mentioned a few of those things before, but just to reiterate, those next steps will include access to soft skills support, so things like self-esteem, workshops and personal development workshops, essential skills, so literacy, numeracy, IT support. We know that with the demographics information that we have, around about 50% of our referrals that we receive will need some form of support within the essential skills banner. Some will be very light touch, but some may need just that little bit of extra help. So we'll be ready to support with that on day one. And in addition to that, then, we've already talked about the employability skills and readiness for work and vocational training, work experience and access to any specialist interventions. So, for example, if the participant perhaps is having some struggles with money management, if there's a debt issue, etc., we start to look at that as soon as possible. All of these things that I've talked about will work in concert as well, so we don't do one thing at a time. We try to start working on many fronts as much as we can. And I guess the other side to the customer journey, before I hand back to Tina, is the readiness for work. So the preparation for our participants as they're moving into work. That's quite critical for us. The first 4 weeks in work are the highest risk in terms of where a new employee may decide to leave, etc. So also the first month in work can be harder than the other months because the participant might be waiting for their first payday, etc. So it's really important that we work closely with our participants to understand what that first month looks like and how we can support that. And then in the medium term from there, our in-work support functions apply then. So our in-work support is bespoke and catered to the individual need. So we know that some people may not require an awful lot of in-work support, they just needed that help to get them started in the first place. Quite often we're asked for discretion with our in-work support, so that perhaps an employer doesn't, it's not obvious that there's been support in place prior to them starting on the payroll. So our in-work support is bespoke, and again with agreement with the participant. I'll hand you back to Tina.
So in essence, to conclude, one of the most important parts of this particular programme is the employment side of it, and linking up and matching the employers with what their needs are to what the needs are of the participants on the programme. So we have another unique way of approaching the employment market through our centres. We have a team of employer engagement specialists, and it is their job to focus on what the needs of those employers are, and they will be people who are trained and who have got experience in working with large employers and SMEs. We have already, we've opened our doors, as we said, on the 20th. We've already had confirmed 25 interviews in the space of what is a true live period of about 9 days. When you count the first 10 days, is not a real live period. So we're happy with the amount of interviews we're getting in. We've had our first 2 placements in Derry, Londonderry. We're pleased with that as well. Obviously, there's a lot of volume coming through. We've had 897 referrals so far. Our people are busy on the ground. And what's great is, and really hard to recognise, is the feeling of when you walk into one of those centres. It's not like walking into an old job centre of the 70s or 80s. They're vibrant places where people want to go. There's places where they can get a meal for £1 or £2. There's computers there available for them to go online and search for jobs themselves. And it's a place where people are made to feel very welcome and very positive about their next steps in trying to find a job. But going back to the employer piece, we've got a client strategy piece where we will look overall across Northern Ireland, but specifically for the opportunities for the people of the Northern region. So we're looking at an international perspective. So we want to work with, and we currently do work with, Invest NI. And how can we help with getting FDI up to the Northern region? How can we help sell that as a region to bring those jobs too for skilled, highly qualified, skilled, great talented people. Then when you go down to the national level, as a huge organisation, over £500 million, we have got relationships with the top employers across the UK and in the Republic of Ireland. How can we help those employers understand what we've got to offer in terms of the Northern region, in terms of our unemployed people? And we're hugely passionate about it, that coupled with, as you heard from Stephen, the compassion we show through helping people through their customer journey. The job opportunities are, they must be a job of 16 hours or more. What's interesting is when you look at the previous steps to work and some of those key lessons the department have looked at and consulted on, there's some key differences in the two programmes, and one of them is the fact that it has to be a single job for more than 16 hours. On top of all of that, and maybe at the core of the employer approach, is the SMEs, and this is where we work hand in glove with the community groups in the area, and where we go up and down the streets of those cities where we're based, and we talk to the local employers and find out what their needs are, because that's as equally as an opportunity, if not more opportune, for our candidates coming through this this particular programme. So we're excited. We've already started with the SMEs. As I say, we're only live a couple of weeks. We have a launch coming up, and I invite all of you to come along and actually see one of these centres, because it's only when you see it that you can understand the scale of 30,000 square foot, that you can understand that when you walk in one door, you're going to see a host employer. So, for example, with Jaguar Land Rover, we have a chassis that we have there that we are training people on, an actual chassis. You'll open a door in one of our centres and you may walk into a casino, and maybe not appropriate for Northern Ireland, of course, but certainly we're training up croupiers who then go and get jobs on cruise ships, but also for the West Midlands, it's definitely a big job entry level. So a host employer will be set up just like you're in the employment of an employer, and people get to experience and try different types of jobs to find out what it is the match for them as well. So it's quite unique. So we invite you all to come along, and we will be inviting the local councillors, which is very important to us, as well as inviting those community groups as well. Thank you very much for your time. I'll just finish on one point. Is the name of the company is EOS. EOS is a Greek word for a new dawn, and we're privileged to be part of the Northern Region's bid and to help with the building of a new dawn for the unemployed people in the north. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tina. Just quickly looking through your presentation, your structure and resource, Stephen, I don't see you on the organogram there for the North EOS NI, is that?
You don't see me, did you say?
No, Stephen,
Stephen?
sorry.
Oh, Stephen's actually a policy and communications officer for the whole of the UK, so he supports
Right.
the whole business.
It's okay, it's just trying to get
Yeah.
the fit there. Tina, you explained at the beginning, I suppose, who EOS were and where you come from. Can you give us, I think one of the main concerns the committee started off with was about absentee landlords in
Yeah.
this process.
Yeah.
And I think you clarified them with the EOS NI. Who has EOS NI? Who's your shareholders? Who's your owner?
Yeah, well, first of all, EOS is a wholly owned company by Avanta, which is our welfare to work business in GB. That is owned by the Staffline Group. Staffline Group is the parent company. Staffline Group is a public company, and it trades on the AM, and it's owned by shareholders. And it's led by Chief Executive Andy Hogarth and a senior team. I am one of those people on that senior team.
Okay, so just it's now owned by Avanta?
Okay, let me explain that. We acquired Avanta in May of this year, and Avanta and EOS together in GB became Avanta as a trading company. For Northern Ireland, we became EOS NI because we thought it important to set up EOS NI as a company. Within the Staffline Group, we've probably got about 12 companies, from training companies to recruitment companies to the welfare side, but they all sit wholly owned by the Staffline Group.
Okay. Just slightly confused now, maybe you can, for the Northern Region, which EOS was successful for, Avanta also bid.
That's right.
At that stage, were you the same company, two companies?
No. Well, if you imagine the bid process and the consultation process has been going on since 2012. The bid process was actually finished by May of this year. We were waiting on decisions.
The decision was awarded pre-merger.
There you are.
Right.
So, yeah, and the acquisition of Avanta wasn't until May, after we had been awarded. Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't ever find a situation where we would normally bid for two contracts and two parts of the same company if we didn't own that company at the time.
Right, no, sorry,
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify. From your two centres, you're going to say, you cover 42% because of demographics, and that's been based in London, Derry and Mollusk. It's a large rural constituency.
It is.
How are you going to cover those other 58? I know Stephen mentioned about travel times. I'm also looking at travel infrastructure and things like that to sort of centre nearly half your business in the two extremes, I suppose, of the region.
Well, extremes is a good word, because actually most of the volumes coming through those large centres are coming from, when we look at the numbers, are coming from Newton Abbey and from Foyle. That's why we placed the centres where we placed them. The centres are large investments. The investment so far in just the centres is 1.2 million into those areas. And in order for those centres to work, you must have a certain volume coming through them. Now, those centres are open to other people from the region and indeed other organisations. However, part and parcel of the bid was that we as an organisation wanted to partner up with those established organisations in those other local areas. So, for example, Network Personnel is an established business that covers for us Larne, Carrick, Ballymena and Antrim. And it was important to us as part of the bid that we ensured that we gave I really gave them their place in terms of supplying in those local areas. Again, back to our whole focus on local for local. Another example is L Enterprises. They've got offices in Coleraine and Ballymoney. And if you track where our centres are through our supply chain, we're probably covering more areas than actually the JBOs in some instances. That doesn't take away, Chair, the challenge of rural areas. And we have some quite innovative solutions to bring to the table on that. But we certainly have a wider coverage by partnering with those other organisations. I mean, one good example on that is Rathlin Island. You know, and we've got a hub where we've got a person, an organisation in Ballycastle, but we've also got someone else who can use a hub there. And we've also got a peripatetic solution where we can actually go to people as well, assuming the ferries are working, of course. So we've really got a solution that was about getting a local solution for that community.
Okay. Of those supply chain partners, I think you said in your presentation that they were carefully selected.
Yes.
Talk me through that process.
Yeah. Stephen, can I ask you?
Yeah, absolutely. We conducted an open procurement exercise. So through our website, we advertised for new partners, etc. Organisations were then invited to file an expression of interest, and all of the organisations that then went through a scoring process that looked at performance track record, previous ETI grades, and again capability, capacity, etc. There was also a financial stress testing and due diligence process there. The organisations that went through the process and were successful, we then met with. It was really important to us to feel that we connected with our values, with the organisations, and that we could work together in the long term and sort of share that mindset and our behaviours, etc. So that procurement process was, it was a careful one. In a GB context, we go through a Merlin accreditation, a Merlin standard accreditation. It's an accreditation that looks at behaviours and supply chain management. We, as EOS, went through our accreditation in May of this year, and our Northern Ireland procurement activities were brought into scope. So even though the Merlin assessment doesn't apply in Northern Ireland, we were able to bring all of the work that we'd done and the approach that we'd taken into scope so that we could gauge our effectiveness. And we scored very well in our assessment with a good grading at 70%, and we were very happy with that.
Okay. The targets for the programme are challenging and, I suppose, critical. Do you think you'll hit them in the first year, second year?
Yes, we're confident that with our plans that we will hit the targets. Oh, we're very aware of the challenging conditions in the northern region specifically, but we're confident with our targets.
Okay. Just ask you, what learnings have you taken, taken them from your GB model over there? Where in the first year, and I'm thinking, I'm looking here, ESA 18 to 24, you had a target of 5.5%, hit 1.3. For your JSA 25 or more, target of 5.5%, you hit 0.8%. That's your Birmingham, Solihull, Black Country sort of targets there. What makes you think you'll be different in the northern region.
Yeah. Well, what's really interesting about those statistics is it's like any statistics and how you read them. So, for example, in the DWP with the particular work programme, it's actually set up in a different way to how Steps to Success is set up. So we're not necessarily, in terms of targets, we're not comparing apples with apples. In Steps to Work, on the work programme, it's actually a 2-year programme. So when those figures were pulled out, that was in the first year. And actually, it wasn't... Our targets are on job entry, and those targets were on after 6 months of being on the programme. So they're not like for like. And if you look at the...
Okay, well then I'll take you to the 2-year programme.
okay,
You know, it was April 12, March 13. ESA new customers exceeding the 12-month prognosis. A target of 16.5 and you achieved 6.9.
I guess what
So that would be apples and apples.
Yeah, well, it's
First, the 2-year stage.
Yeah, and
No,
Chair-
I
I know.
I want to know how you're going to be different from.
Absolutely, and I can talk to you about how we're going to do what we've set to do as per the criteria of Steps to Success, which again I have to say the criteria and how they're measured are different. But if I take you to year 3 of the results as per the DWP, because they are rolling years, and what we saw right across all the suppliers, and there were 18 across GB, is that the results were extremely low in year 1, and a lot of media coverage was there on that. Year 2, the results increased, and year 3, the results have gone up in that type of an angle, where they're up now on average to over 20%. And if you break that down into the ESA group, the young people, and those people that are 24 or 25 and up, we're getting very different results. But in year 3, if we carry on at the rate of growth that we've got, and I'm talking about across all the suppliers, we are looking at hitting with the work programme in year 4, which is when it ends, we're looking at hitting probably either up to 40% or in the early 40s.
Okay.
Yeah, it's that growth level.
I think you will be aware, maybe from other presentations as well, we've asked the department to keep the committee up.
We will.
With your contracts or your targets and how you're achieving that.
And Chair, if I may add something on that, if you look at it's interesting to note how those contracts work in GB. There are 40 contract areas, and there are in and around, well, there were 18, now 17 suppliers. As it stands, EOS, with its innovative model, for the DWP last year, we were sitting at number 1 for most of the year, and this is on the EOS model. And at the moment, to the month ending September, on a cumulative basis up until the end of September for the 3-year programme, EOS sits in the UK, or in GB, sorry, as number 2 out of the 17 suppliers. So we're really proud of our results and how effective the innovative solution has been.
Okay. Pat.
Good morning, everybody. It's a big task you have, and I hope you get the success that you're telling us you're going to have. So when you use the terminology, localised solutions is so important. I represent a constituency that unfortunately has the highest levels of unemployment, highest levels of economic inactivity. But leading up to that, we have very good supply chains who worked on the Steps to Work, who were meeting the tasks, meeting the mark, very credible, reputable, hardworking. What discussions had you with them prior to progressing your procurement process?
Well, firstly, everyone was invited to the procurement to become a part of our supply chain. Anyone who was delivering services on the Steps to Work was eligible, if they were specifically for Steps to Work, were eligible for 2Pay. And we as an organisation guaranteed that we would offer every single person that was eligible a job on our programme. We didn't want one redundancy, and that was really important to us. In terms of looking at I think also for your area particularly, through the Chair, I think there are a lot of support services to a lot of the supply chain, which is through community groups and local groups, etc. And we've been really busy setting up the centres. We've been really busy recruiting the local teams, near on 69 people locally, and we've been busy with the supply chain, introducing all of the things that they get as part of the offering as being part of our process. At this stage now, on the 27th of November, as part of the launch of the website, all other community organisations that had been maybe not involved directly in the supply of Steps to Work, but maybe had been working as part of it, will be invited through a new process, expression of interest, specifically for those types of organisations. And just to finish, when we started EOS in the Midlands, on the Merlin system, they track how many suppliers. We started with 16 through the process, and we're now on 57. So we absolutely expect that to grow.
Yeah, what does surprise me, and I take your point that it's still progressing, and I note that for future reference that you said it's progressing. One would imagine if you're trying to meet the needs and have an understanding of local employers and businesses where you're going to get the placements and one thing and another, the best people to speak to is the existing supply chain and trainers. Mm-hmm. How many of the existing supply chain at present on the Steps to Work will you have as subcontractors on the Steps to Success in Derry?
Okay, I'm going to pass you, Stephen. I have it with you.
Yeah, so we liaise with the organisations under the TUPE process to make sure that all of our statutory obligations were met, and there were a number of organisations in these. It was the prime organisations that we went to as our primary source. One of the organisations was Customised Training Services, so over there in Strabane and also in Lisnagelvin. They're with us in an end-to-end capacity as part of our supply chain on Steps to Success, but none of the other primes are with us.
So, in essence, out of all the multitude of supply chains that we have in the constituency of Derry, you've only one now within the Steps to Success. Is that what you're telling me?
No, we can actually call on through the supply chain, and we can give you a full list of the supply chain. We can call on some of our supply chain cover the whole of the northern region. So, for example, if we're looking at entrepreneurship, starting your own business, a lot of that is done. We've also got supply chain based in Lisnagelvin as well, and they're across.
That's the same one.
The northern region.
That's the same one you referenced.
Yes, but in the actual city of Derry, actually the 1.2 million centre, that investment has been put in to cover the needs of Derry, and therefore we held 42% of the supply in order to make that investment into the city and bring that unused space to life with fresh jobs, brand new jobs on top of the people that we too paid over. So that was quite important to us.
That's a good diversification from the question I asked, but I'm still very keen to know that given we had department officials coming in here, and I meet with these, all politics is local, so I have seen the value and the value for money on some of the Steps to Work supply chain subcontractors in my own constituency, and I must say to you, I fail to understand why their names are not on this list. If you're looking to make an impact on my constituency, you're not going about it the right way.
Well, if I may, it depends whether you're talking about specifically the direct supply chain of this programme or whether you're talking about the wider context of people supplying further services. So, for example, we have an intervention supply chain, which is separate to the direct supply chain in terms of the programme, and then over and above that, we will have our local outreach. In terms of the actual procurement process, we followed the rules and the structures laid out to us by the department, but we're certainly... We're definitely certainly keen to work with all organisations that can offer some sort of support in terms of the journey, but we're also quite clear as to this is a different type of programme now. It is a programme where it is based on results, and it's based on getting results for people actually into jobs, and that's the basis and the structure of the programme.
Yeah, and believe it or not, Tina, the Steps to Work contractors, subcontractors in Derry were meeting the targets, and we're getting people into work. And we're meeting the demands of employers in the city. Can I ask, on a separate point, I'm not convinced, by the way,
Okay.
And you'll need to have additional confidence measures as a local politician, and if you're going to address the City Council on these matters, you'll need to be better placed with your responses as well. In terms of giving the level of disabilities across the region and the level of concerns that those with disabilities are becoming more marginalised, how many specialised disability trainers will you have within your main 42% of core staff or within the supply chain?
I'm going to pass that to Katrina.
At the minute, our key supply chain partner, end-to-end supply chain partner that supports us with disability support for those with physical and mental health is USIL, the Ulster Supported Employment Limited. That is complemented by a range of additional suppliers, as Tina had talked about, the specialist intervention. We intend to go out at the end of November to target new organisations to join that network. We recognise that mental health is a real issue in Northern Ireland, with 1 in 4 people presenting, that services and statutory care are difficult with long waiting lists, and it's our job to safeguard and protect those clients. We have a duty of care to them. So at the minute, we have a supply chain that can offer us CBT, drug and alcohol counselling, mentoring, NLP for low and moderate depression. We intend to work with the newly formed health and wellbeing hubs in terms of how we join that up and step up into statutory care where we need to. But it is very much so an evolving picture in terms of how we build that network.
Well, I'm going to finish this, but I see one of your specialist groups on alcohol as a group based in Belfast. Anyone, any knowledge of the northwest area of Ireland would understand one of the main rehabilitation centres for alcohol and substance abuse is in Northern Centre.
Yes, I appreciate that, and understand that there is excellent community organisations in the Foyle area as well.
So do you think an organisation that's based in Belfast is going to have an impact on my constituency?
If I may on that, as we said, the expression of interest for the local centres is going out on the 27th of November, and all organisations will be encouraged to go through that process. It'll be a fair and robust process, and we'll be encouraging, and we are aware of other organisations in the city, that, as well as actually in other regions, other parts of the northern region, that we'll be encouraging to go through that process.
Chair, I'm finished. I'll be keen just for a follow-through with yourselves at a meeting just to go through some of these. Thank you.
And we'd be really keen in working with you in order to ensure that we do take the right road in your city, because we do understand your knowledge and we are passionate about getting it right.
Okay. David?
Chair, it was really on the point that you had raised then in relation to the actual getting a handle on the structures, because clearly Staffline have acquired Avante and then merged the two, and so it was just to try and get a handle on exactly how the organisation is structured, to be honest, and I think you touched upon most of that during the answer to that question. So.
Can I just, your site in Mollusk that you talked about, Stephen, the L-shaped site, and one end you've got an employer working, or in the end of that, is he given training, or what exactly is he doing in the other end of your building, for want of a better word?
So it's an extension of normal operations. So in the warehouse, we'll build the racking units that go there'll be I guess sort of alleys where the forklift trucks can operate, and then it's about stock transference, so loading stock onto the units, taking stock off. We've got the big roller doors there out the back for the wagons to pull up and have real-life deliveries, collections, etc. So, it's an extension of the existing.
It's part of your building, really?
It's part of our building, yes. We've isolated it from, in terms of being able to close off parts of the building, so that in peak trading times and in peak recruitment times, our host employers don't have to abide by our 9-to-5 rules for our staff members, etc. So we can open at weekends, evenings, we can do 6 a.m. starts to replicate the workplace, etc., which is all part of our core offer.
Mm-hmm. Tina, just to finish, I suppose, as was your answer, and your answer to Pat, the companies were part of an intervention supply chain rather than the direct supply chain. An intervention, we've never heard tell of an intervention supply chain either from the department or any of the other two programme leads that we have. Can you tell what's an intervention supply chain?
In terms of the, actually I'll pass to Katrina on what the intervention teams do and why we term it in that way.
Okay, and really it's a complementary network to our end-to-end supply chain. So it's for people that are presenting with barriers to return to work, and they need bespoke sort of support in terms of making that journey. So it can be around money, whatever's affecting their daily life in terms of that journey to return to work. So it can be around money advice. It can be for lone parents in terms of giving them support and child care arrangements and group support. And again, it can be then more clinical therapeutic interventions for people who are presenting depressed or anxious and in terms of that return to work, preparing them for that journey.
And you didn't see those being direct partners that should be in place in your direct supply chain?
We'll clarify that, Chair. Stephen, did you?
So all of the organisations will be under contract. So they are a contracted organisation. There is transaction fees and costs for services.
Are they listed through the department with your end-to-end supplies?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Are these companies who are under contract that are in your intervention supply chain listed with the department?
Yes.
As a direct supply chain?
Yes. So the department has sight of the organisations that are within our specialist supply chain and will have sight of all contractual documentation as part of their risk assurance measures as well.
All right. I think we'll contact the department just to get clarification in that, because there just seems to be a grey area. Whether it's your description of what...
Maybe I can clear it. Maybe try one more time to clear it up, if you like. In terms of the differences in terms of the direct supply chain is those people are, alongside ourselves, responsible for delivering on the targets and steps to success. In their particular areas, as I said, 58% will be conducted by the supply chain. For all of us, the supply chain, and for EOS NI, we will have the support of organisations, and this is the organisation piece that will grow. We have Lockview Training, we have Gingerbread, NIACRO, Citizens Advice, we have the Global Education Limited, we have the Training Company, we have Simon in the Community, we have Business in the Community in the city. So we have various people on there. Now, what we will do is we will procure their services, and we will invest and we will pay for those services as an organisation to where they're needed. But that particular part, depending on the flow through, and this is why we didn't do a definitive stop there, that's it on the supply chain, support supply chain. We've got to look at what presents in the particular areas. For example, what will present in Ballymena in terms of outplacement needed, in terms of some of the skilled people coming out of work, may be very different to what is presented, let's say, in Ballycastle or, for example, Strabane. So we also have to have an evolving model where we continue to have supportive partners added to that chain.
Okay. I think the terminology, I think maybe the department uses specialist rather than intervention supply chain.
I think they do. Yeah, I think they do.
Just a final question, then we ask some of the other ones there. Back office staff, I suppose we had concerns that some of the back office was actually going to be based in GB. Is EOS going to be doing any sort of practice?
We've actually even went further than that. So we have 3 people in total in a shared service centre in St Helens, and they are on billing back office, and that is in terms of jobs allocated to this. Out of the 72, 69 are Northern Irish based. We're going even further, Chair. I'm sure you can imagine we are the Northern Irish team, and we're hugely passionate about here. And right down to ordering our furniture was done with the Northern Irish company. The 1.2 million we spent, the majority of that was spent with a foil local company, probably heard of them, Martins. We ensured that our paper is being procured from Northern Ireland. So whatever investment we put in, we believe we created 50 jobs in building the centres. Whatever investment we're putting in, we're putting back into Northern Ireland. And it's for me, as the Managing Director of the group, is to reinvest back into Northern Ireland and indeed the Republic of Ireland to build a bigger, longer, more strategic plan for the group within the island. That's our plan.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you so much. And again,
thank you.
Let me extend the welcome to the centres, to all of you and anyone from your parties and the councillors. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Same landlord as me.
Next week's spotlight. Okay, members, moving on, our next departmental briefing now is on the 0 hours contract. Again, we've already covered the Hansard. So members, page 471 is your briefing paper.
Sorry, what page again? Sorry.
471. Members, could I just welcome Tom Evans, Deputy Director of Strategy, European Employment Relations Division, Mr John McKeown, Head of Employment Relations Policy and Legislation Branch, and Ms Deirdre Walsh, Employment Relations Policy and Legislation. Tom, 10 minutes.
Okay, Chairman,
If
we'll
it's
keep
needed.
it as brief as possible. I'm going to kick off just with a bit of an overview of the consultation and some of the research, and then Deirdre and John will go into sort of a summary of the responses. I mean, the Department published its consultation on the 23rd of June, and it ran for 14 weeks due to the summer period and ended on the 29th of September. We received 35 substantive responses to the consultation, with an additional 325 from a lobby group called 38 Degrees, all of which were really in opposition, in very strong opposition to the use of 0 hours contracts. What the consultation sought to do was to establish the potential policy proposals that the Department and the Minister might want to consider in terms of whether there's a need for legislation or for some change that didn't require legislation. 0 hours contracts has generated significant commentary, and so really trying to get a better understanding of their use in Northern Ireland, and we carried out also some research. We met with a number of HR experts. We did a telephone survey of employers in Northern Ireland to provide a more accurate baseline quantification of the number of people on 0 hours or no guaranteed hour contracts. And we held a seminar which was organised by Legal Line to allow businesses and employee representatives to discuss some of the options, and that was quite a positive experience. The sort of in general, the issues that have come out of the consultation so far is, and I think, we've come to you quite often, Chair, and it's quite a divided issue in employment law. There are particular positions that are taken, but it was interesting that on this there was some consensus around, both from a business and employee interest, that in terms of this issue in 0 hours contracts, principles of good faith, reasonableness and integrity should underpin any employment relationship, and that was something that all stakeholders were very strong in promoting. The consultation did highlight a number of wider societal issues, such as some equality issues and access to benefits. Some ambiguity and confusion on the part of employers and employees in relation to employment status was also stated clearly as an issue, and that's probably been an issue in terms of trying to quantify how many 0 hours contracts are in existence. Also, the link between 0 hours and low pay, including access to benefits, including working and child tax credits, was referenced throughout the consultation, and concerns were also expressed as to the quality impacts, particularly in relation to women, young people, ethnic minorities, those from a lower socio-economic background, and again back to people who are trying to access the benefit system, and also for people with physical and mental health issues. The most commonly held view was that there was a need for a clear definition of a 0 hours contract, and this was illustrated in the workshops that were held with Legal Line, because we actually looked to agree a definition. And again, I think there was a range of views, because some of the employers, even at that event, it referenced their use of casual relief staff and as and when contracts, but didn't identify them as 0 hours contract themselves, so they didn't even see it as that. Moving into the quantitative research, this again has not been a simple matter, because again, many employers and employees have different understandings of what a 0 hours contract means. And earlier this year, the Office of National Statistics conducted a survey of employers about the status of contracts they have with employees. ONS used actually the term non-guaranteed hours contract rather than 0 hours to assist in people understanding of what that meant. And the survey estimated that 4 to 5% of employee jobs did not guarantee hours. And if you took a simple pro rata estimate for Northern Ireland in terms of the 4 to 5% range, this would give a figure of around between 28 and 35,000. In seeking to test the robustness of those estimates, we initiated an employer-based questionnaires survey on non-guaranteed hours in the latest Intertrade Ireland business survey, or it was one over the summer. And this survey had a sample of 500 private sector businesses. The survey, which provides a broad estimate of the proportion of private sector non-guaranteed hours contracts, it seems to be, and probably is likely to be from our colleagues, the economists, influenced by seasonal factors, which suggests that only 1 to 2% of businesses use 0 hours contracts, which would suggest only 5 to 10,000, between 5 and 10,000 jobs. We think that's probably an underestimate, given that, and this may be due to it was a snapshot of the position at a point in time and may not be representative of a full year economic cycle. And also, it would appear that this is a lower estimate than the pro rata comparison of the UK figures. We're therefore undertaking further work to assess the number of 0 hours, particularly in the public sector, again, which we have had, how would I put it, not a consistent feedback at, but the initial findings would suggest that while 0 hours contracts don't feature much within the Northern Ireland Civil Service Department, they're used in the wider public sector, Arms Length Bodies, Health Trust. But this could be, and that's where we're trying to generate further data, and I know the committee has raised this before, whether this is third-party suppliers. We also conducted qualitative research through a range of teleconferences with a number of expert organisations, the Work Foundation, the Resolution Foundation and CIPD. And we found this to be very helpful because these organisations have conducted their own analysis and research on 0 hours contracts. There was general consensus that for low-paid workers and those with unpredictable income, it's difficult to justify exclusivity clauses in any circumstances. The Department is planning further analysis with stakeholders using case studies and scenarios to explore the impacts on workers and business. And one of the things we're going to do, we're going to be working with our employment service. We're meeting with this week to see whether we can start bottoming out on how people may access the benefit system and maybe develop some case studies. I'm now going to hand over to Derry and John to take you a quick canter through the actual responses to some of the questions.
Okay. The first policy issue that was considered was the use of exclusivity clauses, and a majority of the respondents thought that these could never be justified in a contract that didn't guarantee hours. And of those who thought that they could in certain circumstances be justified, the main reason was that the worker may have access to commercially sensitive information, although others felt that this vulnerability could be tackled in other ways. The vast majority of the 31 respondents favoured a ban on exclusivity clauses, as they were concerned for the most vulnerable workers and employees who may have few choices as to job offers and may feel unable to object to an exclusivity clause for fear of not being given a job or not being offered further work. Opinion was fairly evenly divided on whether banning 0 hours contracts and or the use of exclusivity clauses could create negative impacts for SMEs. 11 of 17 respondents would support a restriction on the use of exclusivity clauses in a 0 hours contract. For example, banning their use in employment contracts guaranteeing less than a specified minimum number of hours or minimum gross pay. And one respondent suggested that the minimum hours should be 35 hours and minimum pay the living wage. All but one of 18 respondents didn't believe that a ban on the use of exclusivity clauses would discourage employers from creating jobs. Indeed, some of the responses suggested that such legislative action may actually assist the creation of jobs. On the issue of guidance and a code of practice, which we consulted on, a majority of 24 respondents were in favour of focused guidance on the use of exclusivity clauses, but some of these favoured it only if legislation was not going to be taken forward. And similarly, in regard to a code of practice setting out a fair and reasonable use of exclusivity clauses in 0 hours contracts, respondents were only in favour if, in the absence of legislation being introduced. As you know, we consulted on automatic rights and a right to request, and the consultation explored options for acquiring rights if a worker had worked on a 0 hours contract regularly over a period of time, for example 12 months, and an automatic right to guaranteed hours, or at least a right to request a fixed term after a given period. A majority of the 30 responses to this question thought that a worker on a 0 hours contract should have an automatic right to guaranteed hours if they'd worked on such a contract for a given period. And the number made reference to the Agency Workers Regulations, where additional rights, as you know, accrue after a qualifying period of 12 weeks. 10 respondents, however, did not agree that there should be an automatic right to guaranteed hours in these circumstances. There were 28 responses to the question relating to the right to request a fixed-term contract, and 14 were in favour and 14 against, and some were against the proposal for opposite reasons. For example, it was either not sufficiently a powerful instrument to assure employment rights, or it was a step too far in addressing issues arising from 0 hours contracts. We also, as you know, consulted on compensation provisions and annualised hours. And 15 of 28 respondents were in favour of introducing a compensatory arrangement similar to that adopted in the Republic, with 13 opposed to that proposal. And there were 22 responses to the question on whether 0 hours contract workers should be able to move to an annualised contract, and 10 were in favour and 12 against. I'm going to pass you over to John now for the remainder of the questions posed.
And Chair, I'll just quickly run through the last couple of issues in the consultation: the common law redress, what we heard from employers and employees, and then the 2 issues around impact on equality and benefits. In terms of what we've headlined there as common law redress, 21 respondents answered our question on whether retaining the current arrangements is sufficient and whether taking forward legislation would undermine flexibility and individual choice. And of these, there was an overwhelming desire, 17 responses, for legislative change, with only 4 suggesting that the current arrangements, in conjunction with improved guidance, were sufficient to address any issues. And in terms of what we heard from employers and employees, the consultation asked a number of questions of these groups. Very few respondents on the employer side confirmed that they use 0 hour contracts. Some employer representatives said that their member organisations used them, and of those who did use them, there was a prevalence in health, social care and education sectors. Those who used 0 hours contracts commented on their policy when an individual declines work, and I know that this featured in our previous discussions. A number mentioned that arrangements would be reviewed if there were repeated refusals of work. And those who used 0 hours contracts said that the workers did not work regular patterns of work, and there were differing notice periods provided to workers in relation to their next shift, for example, and that ranged from 2 weeks to 1 hour's notice, so you can get an idea of the extremes. In terms of employees, no employees directly responded to answer the individual questions. However, some case studies were provided by a number of the respondents, and particularly from the advisory services sector, and these were provided to illustrate the experience of individuals working in a 0 hours contract. Most of these described negative experiences of working under 0 hours contracts. They highlighted particularly the uncertainty implicit in the working arrangements, the impact of fluctuating hours, the implications for caring responsibilities and for claiming benefits, as we've heard already. One respondent noted a significant increase in the use of 0 hours contracts, particularly over the last 18 months. That was from the Law Centre. In relation to equality impacts then, we asked consultees about the equality impacts of 0 hours contracts and on the impact of claiming benefits. 12 respondents of a total of 23 believed that 0 hours contracts impacted negatively on a range of groups, and I'll just list those very briefly. Young people, women, ethnic minorities, those from a lower socio-economic background, benefit claimants, those with physical and mental health issues and disabilities, and families and carers and students. and then finally those with low educational attainment. So most of the respondents, they're focused on a range of those groups in their individual responses. 16 respondents were clear that 0 hours contracts create difficulties for employees in accessing benefits and in things like accessing mortgages and credit. Examples of the benefits most likely to present difficulties in this regard included job seekers allowance, working tax credits, child tax credits and housing benefit.
That's happy to take questions.
Okay, thanks, Tom. I suppose in regards to the consultation and the responses, it is pretty consistent in its divide. There is nearly a 50-50 on both sides in most of your questions and responses. Apart from, definition, seems to be the big problem. What steps can you take now to get over that hurdle of casual, 0 hours, or all the definitions that are there, Tom?
Well, I think there are probably a couple of measures. I think in terms of ONS, they're going to continue with their survey on the basis of no guaranteed hours, which probably has I think it's easier to explain that to somebody. 0 hours says you're getting no hours, but actually you're not guaranteed any, and it may be a more helpful definition. I think we're going to work also with our researchers and economists and talking to stakeholders and organising to try and get a consensus. And that's something the Minister will want to do in his response, to at least to articulate what believes to be a reasonable definition of it. Now, as I say, we will talk to our legal people about that to make sure that definition is robust in legal terms. So that is one of the issues I think we need to do. I think, as I say, the second issue that is in around exclusivity, people were saying that either it shouldn't be used or only used in circumstances where it's absolutely necessary. And again, we need to take legal advice, because some of those issues were around commercial confidence, confidentiality, and those may be already covered by common law provisions. That's something we need to take legal advice. So that's some of the issues that we're going to have to look at now. And as I say, the balance, as some big stakeholders in the trade union said, you can't just say there were 17 said and 16. We have to look at what those stakeholders mean in terms of the extent of their influence and coverage. So, as I say, we need to do more analysis of that.
Well, just the reason I wanted clarity on that, to declare before I come in here, I'd have worked and actually managed a company that used casual contracts, but would never have considered them 0 hours until started to get through this process. So I think there needs to be a piece of work done educating employers and employees on that. In regards to, I suppose, the numbers that this will affect, which is the big crux as to why we get through legislation or anything else. Some of the, I suppose, estimates that you're putting here in your paper of, but this will affect in Northern Ireland possibly 28 to 35,000. I think it was actually Phil had a response that the health service in Northern Ireland, although not directly through its arm's-length bodies, were employing just under 20,000 people on 0 hours contract. Have you had any engagement with the health department to see if that's robust or how they would respond to that?
I may go into the detail. Just to start, I think in the health sector there are a range of populations like bank staff, so we need to get a better understanding. But Derry has looked at this.
We did, when we saw the outcome of the statistics that were collected from that employer survey, we looked at the public sector and we surveyed departments. And as Tom said earlier, the NICS directly don't use 0 hours contracts, but they do exist in and around health particularly. The difficulty that you just highlighted is that you don't actually identify yourself as using 0 hours contracts if you refer to them as casual or as and when. So we know that we need to go back. We need to go back and do a bit more digging, to be honest, to bottom that out and find out just how many there are around the periphery, if you like, of public sector.
Thanks. Brian?
Sure, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. And I do know that you have been here time and again, specifically on this issue. And but I do think, especially going through the responses, believe that there needs to be some type of legislative protection for people on regardless of what it's called casual, what it's called 0 hours, to protect people from difficult employers. But even when you were going through the different sections of a consultation, you know, that there seemed to be employers there who also recognised that the only way that you can protect workers and in turn protect themselves is through some type of legislation that would put it on a level footing where other employment practices and even the degree regarding the EQIA that should be, there needs to be full compliance with the Equality Commission, and a full EQI needs to be held to determine the equality protections for people. I think I know this is probably a time of year where you have thousands of people who will be going on the short-term contracts, casual or 0 hour contracts, and then that'll drop off the holidays. But it's okay saying, well, they're only getting it for 6 weeks or 8 weeks. You know, they need protections when they're in there. I think you read out a list of people that are by and large mostly affected or impacted on the list that you read out are the most vulnerable in our society. And they're the group of people that we should be going all out to ensure that they're not abused by employers. And I was just looking at some of the things, and I was actually not surprised but concerned that the biggest employer of 0 hour contracts may actually be within health-related employments. And it, you know, it could be home helps, it could be whatever. And many of them, or most of them, are at the low pay end of thing. And I'm surprised because the health service have always, say, prided itself on the employment practices, good relationships with trade unions, and yet there's a sizable section of people who are employed at the other end of the health service that haven't got them same protections. Is there any way that when looking at the government-run agency, because I think we need to clean our own house in terms of that if tenders are being put out or people are being brought in to do that, there's reference made to this to protect those that by the extension of the health service are protected in terms of 0 hour, in terms of wages, rates of employment, and the way they're dealt with by the employer.
I mean, you raise very important issues. I mean, I need to issue a caveat here. Is these were what people have said there are equality impacts. We have to look further than that. I think the issue around health service, which maybe actually not people working in the central government, but maybe third-party suppliers or whatever we need. And I think the question here is that this has to be. The minister is very wary of doing anything quickly that may have unintended consequences, because there is an employment law framework. It will be trying to identify the areas where there is some consensus and we have good intelligence that something may need to be done. And I go back to the issue of exclusivity. Seemed to be that employers were saying these should not, you know, they should be only used and very carefully handled, and it would have to be for very justifiable reasons. So that's an area that we've picked up on, is that maybe something that needs to be done. I think there are issues about increasing both employers and employees' understanding of what these mean, so that I mean, there is a supply and demand, and people go into something without understanding. And sometimes that's because an employer does explain the basis of it, and they don't. All they hear is, "I've got a job." And sometimes, then when they're surveyed, they don't know the basis in which. So there are issues about whether we need to issue better guidance, codes of practice. And as I say, even in the UK government, they've gone out for a second consultation because they have taken measures to ban exclusivity clauses. But now they're having to go out to consultation to say, are there a series of avoidance measures that could come in place which could circumvent it? So the Minister wants to build up the intelligence, and that's why I wanted to come to the committee today to give an understanding of our early understanding of what the issues are. I think we need to, we're working very hard with our statisticians and economists to look at this issue. And I mean, I went to a conference run by NICFA recently, and a gentleman from the Work Foundation did a presentation, which I have to say was a very enlightened presentation, which put the no guaranteed hours arena in its proper context, and actually was saying you need to be careful as a government or as about advocating how much change it, because you may actually have a detrimental impact on positive labour market activities, but you need to obviously isolate where there are abuses or where there were workers or employees' rights are being impugned. So that, you know, at this stage we're still trying to get. It is a bit like an eel; it's trying to catch it because it isn't defined in law. And the question is, the Minister hasn't come to a decision whether it should be defined in law or whether the existing framework provides for it, and it's just.
Just to follow on, and I understand what you're saying, you know, but bad practices are wrong practices, and if there isn't there a record of employers, a good record of employers in policing themselves, then what we need to do is to legislate to ensure that protection will be upheld. And I think the important thing, and all this, and we can debate and argue the point. I think the important thing in all this is what's the next step, you know, because, and it's actually quite surprising when you go through the consultation and as how wide it was, what sort of groups did it take in, that the people who fall into the category of abuse, and you read them out, were the sectors that dealt with them taken on board, how many young people were spoken to. I was actually interested reading some of a couple of testimonies, because I think that opens your eyes in terms of some of the abuses that are out there. But what's the next steps?
Well, the next steps, the Minister is keen that, one, that we came to the committee and gave the committee early understanding. Two, we need to develop better intelligence. Three, the Minister will want to take a view on whether there are any immediate actions that he can take. And he hasn't done that. He has not. He wanted to come before that. And on the basis of that, I think the Minister will either come back himself or ask us to come back, because the reality of it is, the Minister, it was his intention, I think he was here some time ago looking at a forward plan, is that if there are things that need to happen, require primary legislation, that those would come in as amendments to an employment bill that he plans to introduce in the early part of, in the spring of next year. So I think one of the issues is the Minister will take a view is there a need to do something around exclusivity? That's something that he would need to take.
Okay, Pat.
Yeah. Again, it's a good piece of work by the department, I have to say, and painstakingly and very patiently going through the elements just before coming to the ultimate decision what is going to be regulation or legislation. And the points by the Chair earlier, I think it is important. Information, advice and guidance is so crucial, not just for the employee but for the employer as well. Given some of the information you presented today, and I do like the language that Derry was using earlier on, digging deeper, for example, is important. That we have almost 40% of young people, for example, that we do know of, who are presently on zero-hour contracts, many of them in meaningless and very little paid hours work. Would it be useful to do a wee bit of research with those young people? There's groups across Northern Ireland you can have easy access to get their opinions and their views on that might leave you in a better place when you're preparing to regulate for those. What would your thoughts be on that, Tom?
Well, I think, to be quite honest, it isn't unhelpful that the committee makes suggestions, because it gives us quite a lot of leverage to do extra work. And I think, obviously, as the department's responsible for NEETs and a whole range of other things, we can look at maybe through, we have a network of organisations where we can access young people to take a view on that, and that's something that we would be happy to look at.
And we did receive responses from representing young people, Include Youth, for example, and the UCU, and that gave us an idea of how young people view these types of contracts.
Yeah, because going forward, we want to make sure that it's fair and there's no abuse going on there. There's nobody complaining about the use of them, but certainly we all have circumstances where people come to us that there are employers who do abuse it and take advantage of it. Just to go back, because I want to be sure that we're not just you mentioned the range of people, young people, women, single parents, those in benefits, those who are disabled.
Mental health.
So there's quite a lot of people who are vulnerable out there that could be easily taken advantage of when it comes to employing them under zero contracts. So maybe talking to MenCap, for example, or other organisations who are lead Disability Action, who lead and champion disabled issues, might be a good thing as well.
Yeah.
And I know in the past that, declaring on us, I do chair disability all-party working groups. It might be an idea maybe to come on to them.
Yeah.
We have a stakeholder event and get their thoughts and themes around it. Maybe that could be arranged as well next year.
Alistair?
Yeah, I don't have too many questions. I was mainly going to ask around what are the next steps. I would imagine we won't see anything from the Minister. Traditionally, we haven't seen particularly controversial things being brought forward with any recommendations, particularly in employment law. That said, I think that it's right, the approach is taken, we do need more evidence. One of the things that picked up on from comments across the table about the groups that are particularly affected, I think it's also fair to say that those groups find it more difficult to get into the labour market in any circumstances, and actually where we're able to offer them some margin getting into the labour market, getting into work, it could actually be a good thing. The other point I would make is that there is an assumption that every young person or every person on a zero-hour contract wants to see regulation or tighter legislation or is opposed to it, whereas actually speaking to some people, it actually is beneficial to them as well, and that flexibility can be important to the employer and the employee. But I think it is important that we dig deeper in this, get more evidence, because I don't think the evidence is quite there yet. The only evidence we have is that it is a very, very small amount of the labour force is actually involved in zero-hour contracts. We need to know how many of those on them actually are opposed to them in the first instance, because I don't think it's as clear-cut as some are suggesting. And I think it's also important that we get more information on the importance of a flexible labour market, because there are many companies, both big and small, and I read some of the stuff that a lot of bigger companies are using them, and there's a concern about that. But some big companies who get a big contract in will necessarily have to bring people in for a short period of time, and it's good for them to have them in the books because they know they're trained, they know they'll turn up to work on time. So it's important, and for many small companies as well. And I've used the example before of catering companies who don't know what work they're going to have from week to week. To have people there that they can put in at short notice is hugely important to those companies. And I think that if we were to move to introduce legislation too quickly, we could really hurt some of those companies. Around the exclusivity stuff, I think there is more of a consensus, because it does actually remove flexibility for the individual who may be on it. And I think, if anything, I would encourage the Minister to perhaps move quicker on that area, whilst at the same time looking more evidence in the other areas. But I think actually you might find a bit more consensus around that issue in the committee and in the chamber than anything else. But really any specific questions, it was more around what are the next steps, and I can answer that to that.
Okay, thanks, Alistair. Anna?
Yeah. I'm new to the committee. Can you explain to me what's exclusivity clauses? What examples can you give me?
Typically, an exclusivity clause would prevent the worker from working anywhere else, even though they weren't being guaranteed hours by that particular employer.
Okay. Right, I see. That's pretty strict.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I mean, people, don't know what hours they're going to work, and yet they can't go elsewhere to find a job elsewhere. But the CIPD research suggests that only about 9% of zero hours contracts have exclusivity clauses in them. Mm-hmm. So it would appear to be a fairly small proportion of zero hours contracts that have them.
Okay. I mean, that's even putting up more barriers to casual workers. They can't, work in other, say, restaurants or other shops. Okay. Just, I suppose, a comment. I think the term zero-hour contract, it's kind of, it creates that very negative tone to anyone. But, I mean, we always know there are casual workers. Yeah. And then, as you said, it depends on supply and demand. And there needs to be that flexibility. But I mean, certainly I would agree that if there are bad practices, young people being exploited, women being exploited, ethnic minorities or people with low qualifications being exploited, then that we need to deal with. But I just feel there has always in all industries, or many industries in many countries, you do have that casual workers and as and when needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just a couple of points. I think legislation on its own can be quite a crude measure, and I think there are a couple of things. I mean, the issue about accessing benefits, and I think that affects some of the groups that these consultees have said are potentially adversely impacted on an equality basis, and that's something. I mean, John Derry and I were meeting with our employment service colleagues on Friday to look to see whether we can at least look at this issue, not to change the benefits rules. Or John, do you want to say a wee bit more about that?
Well, yeah, we're looking at it from two elements. Obviously, a lot of the respondents, and particularly the advisory groups who gave us some case studies, very clearly demonstrated how difficult it is then if you're not sure how much you'll be working next week and the week after, then what impact that will have on your ability to claim benefit. One of the respondents, I can't remember which one, but quite clearly mirrored the flexibility of 0 hours contract holders with the inflexibility of the benefit system on their behalf. So there was that kind of clash. And the other aspect, back to exclusivity, is that if someone's being told they can't do other work for other employers and might be in a position where they turn down other work, then that can make them fall foul of the benefit system as well if they're refusing work under job seekers allowance, for example. So those two messages came through clearly, and as Tom said, we're beginning that discussion with our employment service colleagues, and then they will lead us on to our discussion with our social security colleagues in DSD.
And the other point I was going to make is on I think providing people with information about their rights, and the current legal redress system, the tribunal system, is available. And it is a contract, and if people don't honour the contract, that should be available. Obviously, you don't want people to go on that, but at least they have that as an option if they believe that their contractual rights have been in some way adversely impacted. So I think that's important, that we start providing better information on what their rights are on the variety of contracts.
Okay, Fra, quickly.
Just one or two other points on that. And that quite a number of people who may go into a job at the present times until the decision is made may go through the DL Peoples and Jobs and Benefits Office, or they may go through the DSE element of it, of those offices also. And even with probably the lack of rates that there is at the present time, is it a possibility that there would be a note or a piece of paper provided to people, just advising them that if they're getting into 0 hour contracts, that this is what they should expect, and these are the questions they should be asking, and so that they're not exploited. And the other question that was raised in the consultation was the whole question of compensation for people who have been told they're expected into work, only to be told when they arrive that they're not required, and they're just left. They've maybe paid a few pounds for taxis and transport. They were expecting a day's wages or whatever, and they didn't get it. And the third point that I forgot to raise, but it was raised in the whole question, is that the people that may be expected to work 21 days in a row, 10, 12, 13 hours a day, the impact that has on their mental health, their general health, and I think that's another urgent thing that we need to look at.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Tom. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, members, moving on to our next briefing is a departmental briefing. Okay, and a departmental briefing on the legislative consent motion on pension schemes. It's at page 503 of your packs. Tom, you're staying on, so can I just welcome Mrs. Jo Wilson, Civil Justice Policy and Legislation Division for the Department of Justice, to Mrs Geraldine Laverty, Employment Relations Policy and Legislation. Right, okay. Okay, Tom.
Okay, Chairman.
5 minutes or so, would that do?
Yeah, no,
Members,
I'll
page
run through this
503.
fairly quickly. Really, what I want to do is just give a background on why the Minister is seeking to advance the legislative consent motion in relation to the Pension Scheme Bill of 2014. And I say Joe and Geraldine, and we're happy to answer questions. I'd be very happy for them to answer questions on the issue. I mean, the purpose of the motion is to ensure that we're able to provide a pension to all eligible fee-paid judicial office holders here in Northern Ireland. This issue has arisen because of a Supreme Court decision, the case known as the O'Brien versus Ministry of Justice. And the effect of this judgment is that all eligible fee-paid, and I think it's important to stress, eligible fee-paid judicial are now entitled to a pension. Following its decision, the Supreme Court referred the matter to an employment tribunal to determine the detail of the pension entitlements that would be available. And corresponding litigation is still ongoing here in Northern Ireland. However, my department has already accepted that its fee-paid judicial office holders have full-time comparison. That's in the employment tribunals. There are salaried judicial chairpersons and their fee-paid. So we really couldn't be in a position to advance litigation and deny that. And therefore the department now felt it was important to establish pension arrangements for eligible fee-paid judicial office holders. However, it's not been possible to simply permit the fee-paid judicial office to join the existing schemes. This is because when the current UK-wide pension provision for salaried judges was established by the Judicial Pensions and Retirement Act of 1993, it was never anticipated that fee-paid judicial office holders would have that right. So there's no ability just to include them in the schedule. And while the creation of a new pension scheme from 2015 on, as part of the wider public pensions developments, will address the problem going forward, retrospective actions are needed now to provide a remedy for those judicial office holders fee-paid who have missed out on pension entitlements from 2000 when the Part-Time Workers Directive came into effect, and that was the governing legislation in which O'Brien based his successful claim. And around August of 2014, the Ministry of Justice in GB indicated its intention to amend the Judicial Pension and Retirement Act of 19 to provide for a remedy scheme for eligible fee-paid judicial office holders. And the MOJ has already introduced government amendments to the Pension Schemes Bill currently before Parliament to establish pension arrangements for fee-paid judicial office holders. But without a legislative consent, the amendment to the scheme will not apply to the fee-paid people here in Northern Ireland. And that's because there is an added complication, that there are effectively two types of fee-paid judicial office holders here, devolved and accepted. I'm getting very technical, Chair, but I have to be, and I said the devolved judiciary are those in Northern Ireland who fall within the responsibility of Northern Ireland departments, and there are a relatively few number in the situation who sit in tribunals and fall within the responsibility of our own department, the Department for Social Development, and the Department of Justice. And for clarity, in our own, the devolved are the people within the industrial tribunals and the fair employment tribunals. The Ministry of Justice is responsible for the accepted judiciary in Northern Ireland, and that means that once the MOJ implement this scheme, any eligible accepted fee-paid officer who normally will be within the court's judiciary will be available to them. But without this motion, the fee-paid judiciary, the devolved ones, will not have access to the same provisions. So while separate legislation could be taken forward in Northern Ireland, given the small numbers, the timescales involved in it, I think it was viewed that this is a disproportionate to the numbers, and that the Minister decided it would be better to row in with the UK-wide legislation, given that the governing legislation is UK-wide now. So I suppose in summary, Chair, we've already as a department accepted that these people are entitled, and the legislative consent motion will allow them to avail of the same pension arrangements as people within the courts here in Northern Ireland and right across the UK. And as I say, the scheme will apply to fee paid service from the 7th of April 2000 to the 31st of March 2015. So it's a remedy scheme to cover that interregnum period. And I think that's where I'll stop.
Okay. Tom, small number, how many?
From a Dell perspective, there are 13 who would currently be affected or access to or potentially access any remedy scheme that's created. Because the other litigation is less progressed than Dell, I wouldn't be in a position to say how many that may be, but Joe could possibly indicate.
From the Department of Justice perspective, it would be one office holder if that office holder is found to be eligible.
Okay. Cost to the department or to who would bear it?
At this stage, because the litigation is still ongoing, the exact financial implications haven't been quantified. Of providing a pension scheme to all the eligible fee-paid office holders has yet to be fully quantified, but officials across all three departments who may be affected by this are liaising with the Government Actuaries Department to ensure that each department has appropriate provision in place at the point in time where the scheme would come into effect.
Right, so there'll be cover. Okay, just correspondence as well. There was the draft judicial pensions regulations, Northern Ireland transition and consequential amendments, primary legislation come through. We've received a letter. Is there any more clarification in that, exactly how that relates to?
That's actually separate because that relates to the pension reforms, the Public Service Pensions Act 2014, and it provides for a career average scheme. But in order to comply with the O'Brien litigation, we would need to provide a final salary scheme on equivalent terms to those provided to salaried judges. So we couldn't use that legislation to provide an equivalent pension scheme.
So this will provide an average earnings scheme or a final?
The new scheme will provide for a career average scheme, but the one that we need to provide to comply with the judgment will be a final salary scheme.
So retrospective will be final salary. Okay. Members, any questions? Okay. Thank you. Members, just take note that under standing orders, the committee has 15 days to produce a report on this legislative consent motion. Draft report will be included in next week's meeting pack for approval. Members content? Okay. Members, just to be aware, we have an informal meeting this afternoon with UCU and NIPSA in regard to NWRC in room 274 at 2 o'clock. Members, after the open session, we'll begin into closed session for training and budgetary review, so if members could stay when we do that. Members, while we're in open session, any other business? Members, if not, date and time and place of next meeting. Next meeting, 10 a.m, Wednesday the 26th of November in room 29. Members will now move on to closed session.
This is the Northern Ireland Assembly.